Welcome to a story built on love, heat, tension, and that kind of pull you can't walk away from. Turn up the volume, lean back, and let yourself fall into the moment. Let every emotion hit exactly where it should. Don't forget to subscribe. New audiobooks every week. Want to win a free bundle of 3 audiobooks? Just comment Dark Mafia Romance below for your chance to win. There's no limit. Comment as many times as you want. 5 random winners will be chosen.
Table of contents. Title page. Copyright page. King of Sin, Dark Mafia Romance, Crown of Sin Series Number 1. Prologue. Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Chapter 7. Chapter 8. Chapter 9. Chapter 10. Chapter 11. Chapter 12. Chapter 13. Chapter 14. Chapter 15. Chapter 16. Sign up for Daisy Fox's mailing list. Further reading King of Vice, Dark Mafia Romance. Also by Daisy Fox. Juliette. I walked into Aphrodite, thinking I was selling a fantasy for a few dollars and a chance to crawl out of debt. I didn't know I was stepping straight into the devil's hands. Angelo Volkov shouldn't have even looked at me. He's the kind of man you survive by avoiding, the kind whose name is whispered like a threat. But the night he called me into that red-lit room, something in his eyes said he wasn't choosing a dancer. He was choosing a possession. Now his gaze follows me like a promise I'm terrified to want. He buys my time, my rules, my breath. One touch and I'm burning. One command and I obey. And when he says he'll keep me, I believe him. Because monsters don't steal hearts. They take souls. And somewhere between fear and desire, I already gave him mine. Angelo. I built an empire out of blood, loyalty, and brutality. Nothing shakes me. Nothing tempts me. Nothing moves me. Until Juliette walks into my club wearing pink and innocence. She doesn't know it yet, but the moment she stepped into my shadows, she became mine. My little diamond. My obsession. My ruin waiting to happen. I should have kept my distance. Instead, I paid $1,000 just to hear her name on her own lips. Now I can't stop. Not when her fear tastes like sweetness. Not when her defiance begs to be broken. Not when the world dares to touch what I've claimed. They'll learn quickly. I don't love gently. I don't protect softly. And I don't lose. Juliette will kneel for me, burn for me, live for me. And God help anyone who thinks they can take her back. This is the first book in the Crown of Sin series. Reading order. King of Sin. King of Vice. King of Wrath. Prologue. I used to believe rock bottom had a shape. A hard floor. A final thud. A moment when life stops tumbling downward long enough for you to catch your breath and think, this is it. This is the worst it can get. But rock bottom isn't solid. It isn't even still. It's slippery. It shifts under your feet. It waits until you think you've survived the worst. And then it opens its jaws a little wider and swallows you whole. I learned that the night I stood in front of Aphrodite for the first time. It didn't look like a strip club. Not at first glance. It looked like a shrine. Gold accents, soft rose-colored lights, the faint smell of jasmine and cigarettes drifting from the open doors. Elegant. Seductive. A place built on illusions so beautiful, you almost forget what's hiding underneath. Almost. The man at the door looked me up and down in a way that made my skin stiffen, and I hugged Ariana's jacket tighter around my ribs, even though it wasn't the cold making me shake. My heartbeat was uneven. A stutter. A warning I ignored. People think fear announces itself. It doesn't. It whispers, "You shouldn't be here." But where else was I supposed to go? I was 18 with a stack of bills thick enough to choke me, a half-empty fridge, and a father who once promised he'd try his best, before he stopped trying, then stopped caring, then stopped pretending to be anything but the reason I flinched whenever a man raised his voice. Fear wasn't new. Desperation wasn't either. But walking into Aphrodite felt different. It felt like losing the last piece of the girl I had once hoped I'd become. Inside, the music was a slow heartbeat pulsing through the walls. The lights were dim, flattering, and warm enough to make your guard drop. Perfume hung in the air like a spell. Women glittered under spotlights, smiling, laughing, bending, moving, like they weren't crumbling behind the curtain of beauty they had carefully painted on. Maybe some of them truly weren't. Maybe they were stronger than me. Maybe I could become like them, I thought. Someone who didn't break. Someone who could weaponize her own body and walk away with money instead of bruises. Ariana had already been working here over a year by then, longer than most last. She was the only reason I didn't run back out the door. She looped her arm through mine, her ginger curls brushing my shoulder. "You'll be fine," she whispered. "Just remember the rules." Her voice was light, but her eyes were not. "Don't trust anyone. Don't mix with the wrong regulars. Don't look twice at the owner." The way she said the last one made something cold slide beneath my skin. "He's strict," she added with a shrug that didn't match the tension in her jaw. "Intense. Don't draw attention, and he won't even know you exist." I nodded, pretending I wasn't already picturing him, this faceless man who supposedly owned half the city's sins and walked through fear like it was sunlight. I told myself I would never need to meet him. I was invisible here. Forgettable. Just another girl trying to survive. But when I caught my reflection in one of the mirrored columns near the stage, I hardly recognized myself. My borrowed outfit hugged curves I didn't know how to use. My hair, usually thrown up in a messy bun, fell in waves over my shoulders. My lipstick looked too bold, too loud. I looked like someone pretending to be brave. Someone wearing a mask so bright it almost blinded me. But maybe that was the point. Maybe if I pretended long enough, it would become true. The dancers brushed past me, perfumed bodies, long legs, glittering eyes. Some smiled. Some didn't. A few gave me the kind of up and down look that told me they'd already decided whether I would survive here or crumble by the end of the month. I didn't blame them. I wasn't sure myself. There are moments in life when you feel your future tighten around you, closing like a fist. Standing there, hands shaking, heart stuttering out of rhythm, I felt the world shift beneath my feet. Not violently. Not dramatically. Quietly. Almost tenderly. Like a whisper brushing the back of my neck. This is where everything changes. But the change didn't come from the stage, or the lights, or the men scattered around with thick wallets and hungry eyes. It didn't come from the freedom Ariana insisted I'd find if I embraced the job. It didn't even come from the first man who asked me my price. It came from me. From the realization that I was stepping into a world governed by hunger. Hunger for money, hunger for touch, hunger for power, hunger for escape. And hunger is contagious. I had run out of options. And hunger fed courage where fear once lived. I tied the loose strap on my thigh, lifted my chin, and stepped deeper into Aphrodite. For the first time in months, I felt something stronger than dread. I felt control. Not much. Not total. But enough. Enough to decide that I wouldn't break. Enough to decide that I would not be my father's daughter. Enough to decide that I would endure whatever the night demanded from me. Enough to learn how to survive. And maybe, if the universe wasn't cruel, how to live. The first song washed over me, slow, sultry, a rhythm meant to guide hips into sin. I inhaled deeply and walked the floor with a confidence I didn't possess, letting the lights paint me in gold. Men watched. Men whispered. Men stared like they were choosing which dessert to sink their teeth into. I didn't know it then, but their attention would become my armor. The power of being wanted, even falsely, even by strangers, felt intoxicating. It felt dangerous. It felt like becoming someone I'd never had the chance to be. Someone desired. Someone untouchable. Someone with value. But beneath that rush, buried under layers of adrenaline and borrowed perfume, there was a quieter truth pulsing in my chest. I was lost. I had been stumbling through life blindly, through debt collectors, through grief, through a childhood that left wounds I learned to hide. I had been searching for something to anchor myself to. Stability. Safety. Meaning. Instead, I found Aphrodite. And maybe that was enough, at least for now. A place that didn't ask for my past. A place where no one cared who I had been. Only who I could pretend to be. Still, as the night went on and the hours bent together, I felt the familiar ache creep up my spine, the ache of being watched, weighed, judged. The ache of knowing every smile was a transaction, and every compliment came with an unspoken expectation. But every time the fear threatened to crack my mask, I thought of Ariana. Of her hand on my shoulder. Of her whispered, "You can do this." And I kept going. By 2 a.m. my feet hurt, my throat burned from forced laughter, and my mind buzzed with the kind of exhaustion that makes you feel hollow and too full all at once. I stepped into the dressing room, sinking into a chair, finally letting the weight of everything press down on me. The lights were harsh here. Unforgiving. They showed every flaw, every insecurity, every harsh truth I tried to hide behind glitter. My hands trembled as I removed my lashes. My chest tightened as I wiped away my lipstick. My reflection looked soft, tired, too young for the world gnawing at my heels. For a moment, I wondered if I should quit before the job swallowed me whole. But the thought died the second I opened my bag and saw the stack of envelopes inside. Pink, white, yellow, all stamped with threats disguised as deadlines. I didn't have the luxury of quitting. Hope didn't pay bills. Dreams didn't buy groceries. Survival did. So I took a breath. And another. And slowly, deliberately, I rebuilt the mask on my face, not with makeup this time, but with willpower. Tomorrow, I would come back. Tomorrow, I would walk the floor again. Tomorrow, I would be stronger. And one day, if I kept pushing, kept fighting, kept clawing my way out of the quicksand my life had become, maybe I would find a different future. One that didn't taste like desperation. One that didn't burn like fear. One that didn't ask me to give up pieces of myself just to stay afloat. But for now, I was a girl trying to survive a world that wanted to devour her. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that somewhere in the shadows of this very club, a pair of eyes had already found me. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. But that is a story for another night. This night belonged to me. To the girl I was before my world tilted. Before a single moment in a red-lit room changed everything. Before the devil himself learned my name. Chapter 1. Juliette's POV. The room was intimidating. The other girls sat at their designated vanities and applied their makeup, and the rest of the dancers were slipping into their seductive costumes intended to seduce money into their pockets. Just do your job. Do not make friends. And don't look twice at Mr. Volkov, no matter how fine he is. As long as you follow those rules, your debt will pay off in no time and you can quit this vile job without any problems. Ariana reminded me of the premise of working at Aphrodite, the most exclusive nightclub in the city. The catch was that it was run by Angelo Volkov, the new head of the Volkov family, the Russian crime syndicate that orchestrated most of the illegal fares in New York. It was early November. I had just dropped out of high school 2 previous summers ago, due to no choice of my own. I was freshly 18 now, and already out of options. That was how I found myself working as an exotic dancer at Aphrodite. Tonight was the 7th night I had danced. As a high school dropout with hundreds of thousands of medical debt, a dead mother and a father that would be better off dead, you find that whatever you need to do to make ends meet to survive, even if it was this. I had never envisioned myself where I stood in this moment. This past week had felt like a dream, not necessarily a good dream. I had silly dreams when I was a young girl. I never thought I'd find myself in a place like this. Ariana, my best friend, practically my older sister at this point, snapped her long acrylic-clad fingernail in my face to get my attention as she noticed I stared off into space trying to figure out how my life had spiraled into this. Ariana Maxwell was 2 years older than me, and she had worked at Aphrodite for almost a year and a half now, which made her the longest employed dancer. As you could probably guess, these kinds of places had high turnover rates, especially when your boss was a notorious killer. She was beautiful and she owned it. Ariana was extremely charismatic, and she had a heart of gold. She cared more about me than anyone left in this world. As she shook her head, her ginger-red curls bounced in the mirror. She reminded me to stay clear of Mr. Volkov every night, but I hadn't seen him here once. At least I didn't think I had. All I knew about him was that he was darkness. He was violence. He was the devil incarnate. He was covered in tattoos from head to toe, and that he was absolutely breathtakingly handsome. Just like the devil himself. Mr. Volkov, Angelo Volkov, was the owner of this club, as well as many others like it. He also had stakes in numerous other legal and illegal ventures across New York, and he was the newfound leader of the Volkov family since the passing of the old boss. He was lethal and cold. I had heard stories and whispers, we all had. He was to be feared and nobody went against him. The other dancers here were all right. I had barely scratched the surface with any of them, but I heeded Ariana's warning not to trust them. Ariana and I huddled together in a corner, where she helped me apply the finishing touches to my makeup. We had been inseparable since we met in high school, and though she had a few years ahead of me, we instantly became each other's other half. Ariana didn't have the rough start in life that I did. But being naturally beautiful and well-shaped, stripping gave her an easy gateway to the luxurious lifestyle she desired, and more importantly, she liked what she did, she was good at it, and she was confident about it. We both gave a side eye to the 3 girls that were crowded on the couch. They were sniffling lines of white powder, and another girl was sat up on the end slumped over. She seemed too intoxicated or high to sit up straight. I exhaled loudly as I looked at my outfit in the mirror. Ariana was kind enough to let me borrow one of her performance outfits until I got my first paycheck and could get something proper. This is from my Barbie look that I did once or twice, you might remember? The one with the really bad blonde costume wig, she added with a giggle. She noticed me checking myself out in the mirror and she nodded in approval. I figured it would look better on you considering you're a real Barbie. Ariana toyed with the eyes of my light blonde hair, flipping it behind my shoulders dramatically. I look like a bimbo. I laughed at my appearance, doing a silly little dance in the mirror. Part of me felt ridiculous, but another part of me felt this rush of seduction that I had never felt before. No, you look hot. One of the girls on the couch approached me, chiming in. I didn't know her real name, but her stage name was Arabella. As she walked over to have a better look at me, she wiped the residue off her nose. I tried not to express my disdain, but I had little tolerance for people who indulged in drugs. It was a sore spot for me for personal reasons. Thank you, Arabella, I smiled at her politely. Do you want a hit? It always helps me perform better out there. Arabella offered me a bump of cocaine off her credit card. I didn't blame her, because she didn't know my strife. I didn't care how badly I wrestled with the hatred of what I was doing. I promised myself I'd never turn into my father. I would never succumb to drugs as a solution for my pain. I shook my head, declining the substance. Ariana led me over to the full-length mirror, where I adjusted the straps of my lingerie. Good luck, she smiled at me before I went out on the floor. I wasn't exactly a fresh face, but I was new here, today just marked my full first week working at Aphrodite. I didn't even have a gimmick yet, and every girl had a gimmick that worked here. A gimmick was your selling point, what made you you, it was your aesthetic. And I still hadn't found mine yet, so I didn't have a name for myself. I was amongst 2 other new hires. I was quite lucky to get a job here as it was a very high-end club. The hiring process was more than easy for me, which differed from the experience of the other girls who worked here, including Ariana. I hadn't even needed to perform a routine. They took one look at me and respectively said I was hired. I assumed I had the right look, and that day I was grateful for my looks that I hadn't thought much of beforehand. For Ariana, her gimmick was Southern. She went through a few different aesthetics before finding the one that fits her the best. After all, she did have great legs, so she looked stunning in boots, and she had a killer faux Southern belle accent that anyone would swoon over. I was trying the bimbo look, and Ariana thought it would be best considering my natural features. Curvy and full in the right places, blessed blonde with stark blue eyes, but honestly it just made me feel even cheaper than necessary. I was on the floor. My job was just to walk around until a client called me over. I was appreciative of the bouncer's strictest rule for the client, which was that you weren't allowed to touch the girls. Some of the other dancers took on patrons on their own time after hours for a happier ending and a bigger payout, although it was against the rules. I didn't plan on adopting that practice. It wasn't long before I attracted the attention of a group of men. They were in their early 30s, well-dressed, and in a private booth which signified that they were big spenders. I put on my best fuck-me eyes with a smile to match and made my way over to their table, swaying my hips as I approached. "Hello beautiful, I'm Dan, what's your name?" One of the group members boasted first, revealing himself to me as Dan. He leaned in towards me, putting his elbows on the table to have a better look at me. Sometimes, I would almost slip and forget to give them my stage name, but it was slowly starting to get easier to play the role as time went on. "Jules," I pushed his chest playfully with 2 fingers, my tone of voice higher pitched and ditzy on purpose. "You know, like diamonds and rubies," I giggled. I twirled the ends of my hair around, trying my best to dumb myself down to sell the bimbo gimmick. "And how much do you cost, Jules?" "It's my birthday." Dan said it like he was some sort of king, and the whole club should have stopped applauding for him right then and there. If I wasn't at work, I would have rolled my eyes, but instead, I just laughed like I was amused and excited by him. I bent over the table to run my hands down his chest, before whispering seductively into the crook of his neck. 200, no groups." I pulled on his tie and bit the air in front of him playfully. "I'll see you all later then," Dan laughed, his head snaked towards his group of hollering buddies as I led him over to a more secluded area. The dance hadn't even been going on for longer than a minute when the birthday boy started to get a bit too handsy with me. "You can't touch me," I reminded him, still using Jules' voice, still being polite as I moved my hips to the music. I was still trying to get that tip, after all. "How many zeros to take it all off?" Dan pulled on the string to my top. I caught it just as it was about to fall, exposing my bare chest to the club. Before I could drop the facade and berate the sleazy patron for breaking the rules, and just for being a general douchebag, a large shadow fell over us. "You've overstayed your welcome, my tiny little friend." Vlad, one of the bouncers, came to my rescue. He saw me in distress from the corner of the room. Most of the employees at Aphrodite, besides the dancers and a few stragglers, were associates of the Volkov family, which meant they were big, scary, tattooed Russian men who looked like they had just served a 20-year sentence in prison and only got out on a technicality. When Dan chose not to back down, the altercation turned physical, and I was certain Vlad would win. Ariana tapped me on the shoulder, and I was pleased to be distracted. "Hey, somebody wants to see you in the red room for a private dance." Ariana smiled wide at me. This was the first time somebody had specifically requested me for anything. During private dances, they were a bit different. It was a more intimate experience. Clothes were optional, and the client was allowed to touch the dancer. I chose not to do private dances. It wasn't required, but most of the girls loved to do them, because the payout was usually larger. Ariana, no. You know I won't do that. I shook my head at her as we watched Vlad haul Dan off over his shoulder like a small child, and throw him outside onto his ass as he shouted. I know. I wouldn't have even brought it up, but he offered $1,000 for it. My eyes went wide when she revealed what the client was offering to watch me dance. Cash. Up front, she added, sweetening the deal. I considered taking the offer. I needed money. I was going to be late on my bills again this month. My credit was already in the toilet, and I just turned 18 only recently. The debt collectors would need to be satisfied again. I sighed to myself, deciding to accept the offer. I mean, I can leave the room whenever I want, right? I half smiled at her, but I was only trying to convince myself it would be okay. I was nervous to be alone with someone who would pay such a large sum of money to spend time with me. Good luck, he's in the Calypso room, she nudged me towards the back of the club. I made my way over to Vlad, the bouncer who had saved me a short time earlier. He had been expecting me, because before my lips parted to speak, he interrupted me. Juliette, third door on the right. He nodded towards the end of the hall that he stood before. His accent was sometimes hard to understand, especially over the loud music and shouting drunk people. Vlad lifted the velvet rope that blocked the hallway, that was aglow with red overhead lighting. I swallowed sharply before I made my way down the long carpeted floor. I knocked on the third door. The cursive font against the door read, Calypso Room. A voice called from inside. It was deep, and I could tell by the accent that he was not American. Come in. I opened the door slowly, not sure what or who to expect. I stepped inside watching my own feet shuffle and then closed the door behind me. Before me on the deep red velvet couch sat the most beautiful man I had ever seen. He was sexy, and he was intimidating in his presence. He was wearing a long-sleeved linen button-up shirt. It looked expensive. The top 3 buttons were left undone on purpose to reveal a chest full of ink. Every inch of his exposed skin was flooded with tattoos, even a face on his face and sharp jawline. He wore a lot of chunk gold rings, some with emeralds in them, some with sapphires and diamonds. His broad shoulders hung golden accents of several thin necklaces, with different symbols hanging loosely off the chains. His hair was a shade of blackish red from the lighting of the room, but I could tell it was dark. He lit up a cigarette, and then his jade green eyes met mine. Some soft music had been playing quietly in the background since I had shut the door, and my client abruptly picked up the remote and turned off the music as if it were an irritant to him. I can't dance without music, I stammered over my words. His simple movements were so aggressive, and I felt like I was withering underneath his gaze. I stood there before him, unsure of my next move. This was my first private dance, and he had turned off the music. Sit, finally, my client spoke, and with a harsh Russian accent. He looked at his lap, and then back at me. He was very impatient. I did as I was told, and once I sat down on top of his powerful thighs, I felt something hard brush against my hip. I looked down casually to see what it was. It was too solid to be an erection. My eyes widened when I caught what it was peeking out the waistband of his dress pants. It was a gun. I quickly looked back up at him. I tried to seem as calm as possible, but I pretended as though I hadn't seen it. My client didn't seem to notice if I saw the gun or not, and if he did notice, he didn't care. What's your name? The stranger asked me. His tone already seemed annoyed, but I wasn't sure why. I had barely said anything. Jules, I leaned into his chest, my fingers toyed with the necklaces that hung. I was using the voice I had selected earlier. I decided that it was going to be my aesthetic. That's not a woman's name. I don't mean your whore name. I meant the name on your birth certificate, my client clarified with a vicious tongue accompanied by an eye roll. I was starting to get nervous. You hear stories about crazy men stalking strippers, and after all, he had a gun on him. He was willing to spend $1,000 on me, and he was practically demanding to know my real name. I wasn't sure I felt okay in this situation. I'm not allowed to tell you that, my boss. I began before the stranger interrupted me. Be quiet, girl. Let me tell you my name first. Angelo Volkov. He took a long drag of his cigarette as he allowed me to process this information. This was Angelo fucking Volkov, Mr. Volkov. There was a reason Ariana had warned me to stay away from him, a reason we all stayed away from him. Mr. Volkov was the devil that walked amongst man. He was temptation, desire, and sin all wrapped up in one murderous package. He was known for how brutal, vicious, and heartless he was. There were stories about him that were so sick and so gruesome that I almost couldn't believe God would allow such a human being to exist, and there he was in the flesh and blood. Now I'll ask you again once more, what's your name? Mr. Volkov's fingers tapped my knee, his tone was more insistent this time, and I swallowed hard. Juliette Larson. I wasn't supposed to be talking to him, I wasn't supposed to be here alone with him. My heart pounded in my chest. To be around him was exhilarating. Ariana said he didn't even bother with the dancers, yet here he was, requesting me. I wondered if he requested any of the other dancers before. When did you start working for me, Juliette? His accent was harsh, yet seductive. His stormy eyes gazed down my body as I squirmed on his lap, desperate to move away from his intimidating gaze. About a week ago, exactly. I was nervous. I did my best not to stammer, not to stutter, not to twitch, not to let my eyes wander, to keep his contact. Men like him could smell fear, and they would prey upon you when they did. Dance for me. His fingers pushed the buttons on the remote, and the ambient music began to play once again. He hadn't smiled once since I had entered the Calypso room, but he did when I danced for him. I never wanted to be a stripper. I never wanted to be this, but sometimes you have to play the cards you're dealt, even if it's a shitty hand. You do what you need to survive, even if you don't like what you're doing or who you've become. Stop, Angelo snapped harshly as if he were unhappy with one of my movements. It was abrupt. I stopped dancing hastily. I was anxious I had done something wrong, or maybe he just decided he didn't like me. I didn't want him to fire me. I must go. I have somewhere I need to be. However, I'll be seeing around, I'll make sure of it. He stood up from the couch and ran his fingers through the dark strands of his slicked back hair. You will? I asked him curiously. I tried to mask the fact that my heart was racing, that a piece of me was a bit intrigued by him. Yes. And I like your little look. You'll keep that up until I decide otherwise. Mr. Volkov didn't ask questions, he just made decisions for you, whether you wanted him to or not. Okay, Mr. Volkov. I nodded to him obediently. Would you prefer a check? Cash? Mr. Volkov pulled out his wallet. You're actually going to pay me $1,000 to ask my name, and for a 60-second dance? I was shocked. Cash or check? Mr. Volkov repeated his question, this time more irritably. A check, thank you. I had mixed feelings about this. On one hand, he was my boss, he signed all my paychecks, so how was this one any different? On the other hand, it was $1,000 for little to no effort. It felt strange for some reason, but I couldn't place it. Angelo silently wrote me a check for $1,000. He placed it in my appreciative fingers, and then he walked away without saying goodbye. He left me there alone, standing in the middle of the Calypso room, music still playing, mouth still ajar, my mind still stuck on a repetitive loop. Angelo Volkov's face remained emotionless yet calculated almost the entire time. It was like he was absolutely cold inside. That was what was truly scary about him. How quickly he could snap. How unreadable his expressions were. There was a look in his eyes that made me think that maybe all those stories I'd heard about him were true. I bit my lower lip, and I shut my eyes tight and hard. The way he looked back at me before he turned the corner was mentally imprinted in my head. Chapter 2. Juliette's POV. My shift ended a little bit after 2 a.m. Ariana offered to drive me home, not wanting me to Uber or take the bus at this hour. I watched the passing night scenery as we drove back to my apartment building. My mind was racing, and I couldn't stop thinking about my private dance with Mr. Volkov. I replayed every conversation exchanged in my head as if it were my favorite song, but I wasn't sure I liked it. So how was your first private dance? Ariana asked me, cutting through the silence. I wasn't sure if I should tell her who the client was, considering how often she had warned me to stay away from Mr. Volkov and the rest of his associates. But it wasn't like I had known beforehand, and neither did she. The dances were anonymous. I decided that I wouldn't keep this from her, especially since it had been plaguing me for the past few years following. Ariana. It was Mr. Volkov. I braced myself for her reaction, looking over at her. Her eyes popped, and she slammed on her brakes at the upcoming red light, practically snapping her neck to look in my direction. What the absolute fuck? Juliette. Why? She began freaking out. I don't know, Nay. I shouted at her. Why did Mr. Volkov ask for you? I told you to stay from that Mafia. She was losing her mind. She began hyperventilating. I thought she was going to cry as her eyes went all blurry with tears. Ariana, please. I don't know. I have never seen him before in my life. He wouldn't tell me. I yelled back at her. I knew she wasn't mad at me, she was nervous for me. I was nervous for me too. Being his radar wasn't something to be proud of. Ariana took a deep breath. Okay, just tell me what happened. Her voice relaxed a bit as she twirled a red curl around in her finger anxiously. I went into the Calypso room, and he was just sitting there. He asked for my real name. I told him I wasn't allowed to give clients personal information, and he revealed who was he to me. I began. He asked for a dance. It didn't last long, maybe a minute or so, and then he left very abruptly, but not before writing me a check for $1,000. It sounded even crazier aloud than in my head. Ariana felt the same way from her bewildered expression. I don't understand what any of that means, Juliette, but for your own protection you have to stay away from him. She shook her at me with a heart full of concern. And you give the money back. I don't understand it, but just give it the fuck back. You don't want to get involved with that life, okay? She seemed worried, genuinely scared to her core, which made me begin to panic inside. I'll give it all back tomorrow, I promise. I hugged my best friend goodbye as she parked in front of my apartment complex. I love you. Be safe, Juliette. Ariana waved me off. Once I got inside, I noticed my apartment door was opened a bit. I began to freak out when I walked inside to see that my things were trashed again. My drawers were thrown on the floor, my cabinets were wide open, broken plates were on the ground, my couch was torn apart, my TV was missing, and every room flipped upside down again. I mean, it wasn't like my things were anything great to begin with, but I worked hard for them and they were mine. This only meant one thing. My father had broken in looking for money or something to sell to feed his drug addiction, which explains why my TV was missing. I wonder what drug he was hooked on this time. After my mother died of cancer a few years ago, we were all in such debt from her medical bills that my father fell into a depression and he began using drugs to cope with the dire feeling of loneliness. Things would be fine for a while. He would quit and he would get a job and he would be okay. He would be the father I remembered him to be when I was growing up, but when he was using, he was violent, abusive, he would steal, he would go benders and not come home for days, weeks even. He wouldn't be able to hold down a job. So I had to drop out of high school. I worked several part-time jobs at once, but without even having a GED, higher-paying jobs were scarce for me. I was grateful when I finally turned 18, and my best friend got me a job at Aphrodite. I never called the police on my father. I knew I should have for many things, for almost killing me when I was 16 in a drug-fueled rage, for stealing from me all the time. The list goes on, but I can't help but remember all the good times we had, the memories. I just want to believe he's still in there. After all, he's all I have now. I could use this check I got from Mr. Volkov, but I knew Ariana was right. I needed to give it back. I went to sleep with mixed emotions about Angelo Volkov. 11 p.m. the next day. I put together my revealing outfit in the dressing room. I followed the strict instructions given to me by Mr. Volkov from last night. He wanted me to keep the Barbie look, so I was going to be Barbie. I viewed myself in the long-standing mirror. I wore pink fishnets laced around my legs, 7-inch baby pink platform heels, and a two-piece hot pink strappy lingerie set I had bought a year or so back. I found it crumbled up in my closet with the tag still on. I had meant to return it, but I was glad I didn't. Ariana offered to fix the ends of my honey blonde hair into loose mermaid waves as I finished my makeup at the vanity. I added long and thick dramatic fake eyelashes to a sharp line of eyeliner. Mafia. Stage now. Let's go. Before I give your solo away. Xander, our supervisor, peeked his head in the dressing room. He was calling for Ariana, as Nevia was her stage name. It was clever and it was backward for heaven. All I could come up with was a play on my own name. I gotta go, but remember, before your shift is over, you better do what I told you last night, she reminded me to return the check to Mr. Volkov. I nodded my head and followed her out on the floor to do my rounds while she ran to her place backstage to prepare for her pole dance routine. While on the floor, I caught an older gentleman's eye. I walked over to his table with seduction in my movements, but before I could approach him with a hello, Vlad stepped in my path, stopping me. Mr. Volkov requests you for his meeting. Vlad pointed to the second floor of the club, past the red velvet ropes where the VIP section was. I looked up at the edge of the balcony, and there was Mr. Volkov and three scary-looking men surrounding him. He stood with two hands bracing the edges of the glass banner, and his gaze met mine. He looked at me expectantly like a god from up there. Our eyes locked. It was hard to look away, but eventually he was the one who broke the gaze. My job was simple. I would just pole dance for the table. Mr. Volkov had a strict rule for his employees. Anything you hear in the private rooms or the VIP section does not leave the club, or you leave the club, in separate pieces. I gave the older man my best apologetic smile from across the way, and then approached the black steps with the purple underglow that led up to the VIP section. I skillfully climbed the stairs in my sky-high pink pumps with a falter. Once past the velvet rope, all intimidating eyes were on me. They had been having a conversation in Russian, so I didn't follow, but it wasn't my job to understand or converse, just dance and entertain, so that's what I did. Mr. Volkov had requested me to dance for his meeting, but he hadn't even offered one word to me since my arrival. I thought of it as not a bad thing. I shouldn't be enticed by him, he was dangerous. After a while, they began to speak in broken English. Some of them spoke better English than others. Mr. Volkov was overall the best though. They were discussing the shipment and trade of guns and ammunition. That's all that I gathered before the topic shifted to me. The girl clung to the shiny metal pole in the center of their meeting. This is the one you told us about? One of Mr. Volkov's associates smiled towards me. It sent shivers down my spine, thinking about what Mr. Volkov had said about me to them. I kept dancing, pretending as if I hadn't heard them talk about me. But when Angelo spoke, it was a voice that was hard to ignore. Pretty, isn't she? He nodded at me as if he were praising a good dog or something, and I smiled back at him as if I liked it. He seemed satisfied with that, and his friends agreed with him. Then they began speaking again in Russian, so I tuned into the music and tuned them out. After a while, Mr. Volkov sent his friends away. He cleared his throat loudly, as if to get my attention, because I hadn't stopped my gracious movements manipulating the pole. I met his eyes but continued to do my job. Stop dancing, Mr. Volkov commanded me. His tone was not annoyed this time, even though doling out another demand. The smirk on his face was evident that he found my brattiness amusing. I stopped and stood upright, stepping off the platform to approach him on the subject of the check. I wasn't sure when I'd see him next. It wasn't exactly as if our interactions were based on my needs, and I wanted to clear my conscience. Once I stood before him, I realized how he towered over me, how my eye level stood at his chest. He was a formidable figure. He stood well over 6'5". Mr. Volkov, I need to talk to you. I managed to coax out of my throat. I felt as if I were cowering under his piercing gaze. He stood before me, waiting for what I'd say next. I can't take your check. I appreciate it, but I can't take it. I shook my head. Why? He cocked his head to the side a bit, making him look all the more handsome somehow. His tone suggested he was confused. I was just as confused as he was. I don't understand why you gave me all that money, I continued. I was going to start rambling off all the reasons that I couldn't continue these interactions, this special treatment, when he interrupted me again. Why? It doesn't matter. There's no reason, accept it. His tone was growing more irritable now. He insisted there wasn't a rhyme or reason, but I knew he was lying. Angelo Volkov didn't just extend his kindness without reason. I simply cannot, Mr. Volkov. It was very kind of you, but I can't accept your special treatment. I don't want it. I don't know why you're requesting me, paying me $1,000 to tell you something I'm sure you already knew, summoning me to your meetings. I can assure you, whatever you're looking for, it's not me. There's nothing special about me. I looked deep into his eyes as if they provided me with some sort of answer, but they were stormy deep seas and they showed no emotion. I needed him to leave me alone. With the panicked reaction of my best friend, and the feeling that crept up inside me when I was left alone with him, I knew he was dangerous. All my instincts told me to run. Mr. Volkov's lips curled into a wicked smile, and he stepped closer to me, closing the small space that separated us. You will go where I tell you, when the fuck I tell you, go there. You will dance for me whenever the fuck I want. And you will not ask me why. Do you understand this? This was the first time he had raised his voice to me. He had lost it when I challenged his word, snapping at me with his harsh accent. His imposing stature made me feel like I had shrunk, and I got the feeling he liked that. My breath caught as his hand came to brush against the side of my cheek. I instantly turned my head to avoid feeling his touch. He chuckled at me ever so lightly, and he inhaled deeply. If you're so insistent, I'll take the check back. But I'll have this. Angelo grabbed my throat, his tattooed fingers clasping around my neck, forcing me to look him in the eye. Whenever I want, he held the gaze for a few seconds, and the longer he looked at me, the hotter the fire that grew from my core got, the more it began to spread. Once he released me, I practically ran to the dressing room to catch my breath. I settled into the couch, my fingers trembling on top of the arm. Ariana waltzed in a few moments later, just finished with her routine. Her body glistened with droplets of sweat, and she was huffing and puffing. She plopped herself down next to me. How was it? I asked her. Pole dancing is not for the faint of heart, Ariana laughed a bit between gasps of air. Once her breathing evened out, she gave me a curious look. I saw you up there with him, Ariana nudged me. He wanted me to dance for him and his friends. I don't know, it was stupid, I shook my head. What was it like? Ariana seemed intrigued now. What was what like? I laughed, confused at her question. The Mafia, she whispered in my ear, giggling. I don't know, they only spoke in Russian, I shrugged my shoulders. I gave the check back. I leaned my head on her shoulder. Good, it's for the best. Ariana lit up a cigarette. My dad fucked my place up again, I rolled my eyes. I don't know why you won't fucking call the cops, Juliette. I mean, I get it, I do, but seriously, you can't just keep letting him fuck your life up forever because you miss some memories. Ariana passed me her cigarette and left me with some of her wisdom as she returned to the stage. I knew she was right, but I just couldn't be without my mother and my father. Jules, somebody is asking for the blonde chick. Xander peeked his head in the dressing room, and so my break was over. I got up, adjusted myself in the mirror, and walked out. Chapter 3. Juliette's POV. Today, I got my first paycheck. I thumbed the envelope and pulled the check out. It was decent, better than anything I had gotten previously from other jobs, but I was still so far behind on my bills. I was hoping that I could get another extension from my landlord on rent. My landlord's name was Harvey. He was about 50-something years old. He was heavy-set and balding. Overall, he was a pretty nice guy, and he was very understanding of my situation. However, this would be my third time asking for an extension in 6 months, and I didn't want him to feel like I was taking advantage of him. I decided to cancel my cable bill, considering I didn't have a TV anymore, so that was an easy fix for now. At around 10 p.m., my phone started to off. I glanced at the lit-up screen and saw that it was Ariana ringing me, so I instantly picked up sliding the green bar across. It was our night off, so I knew exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to go dancing. She arrived in 15 minutes, and we got ready together at my apartment, considering the fact that I lived closer to the club than she did, and we'd be Ubering there. "Do you still have your fake ID?" Ariana asked me as she stuck fake eyelashes to her real ones. I looked around in my nightstand drawer, rummaging the contents, until my fingers touched the fraudulent plastic, and I held it up in the air, waving it around to show it off to her. I opted to wear a baby blue, skin-tight dress with a few cutouts in the fabric. Ariana wore a red dress that complemented her hair. It had a nice slit up the thigh that put her long legs on display. She called us an Uber to a club called Angel Dust. It was another nightclub like Aphrodite, and like Aphrodite it was also owned by Angelo Volkov. The ride was pretty quiet. The driver didn't speak any English, and he didn't feel like playing any music, it seemed. It was overall an awkward ride, so much so that Ariana and I giggled to each other at the uncomfortable silence. The line was lengthy. We made our way to the back of the line with our heads hung low. We waited for about 30 minutes or so outside in the elements of the night, listening to people bicker and holding our pee, and then we finally got inside. The neon lights of Angel Dust were blinding, and the upbeat house music enveloped our senses as we walked into the club. The bass was so powerful, I felt my heels vibrating against the black dance floor. I intertwined my arm through Ariana's so that we didn't separate amongst the crowds of people. We made our way to the bar that's situated in the corner of the dance floor. We were on our way to order our favorite gummy bear shots. Once it was our turn to be waited on, the bartender smiled charismatically at the both of us. "Girls, what can I get you?" "2 gummy bear shots, please." Ariana smiled seductively at him, even though I would have said he wasn't really her type. She slid her card across the bar top so he could swipe it. I huddled up with Ariana after we moved away from the bar. "We can't afford to be paying for drinks all night long." I reminded her that we were on a budget. "I know. That's why we aren't going to be the ones paying for them." Ariana threw her head back along with the shot. I giggled at her remark before following in her footsteps. The sweet alcohol glided down my throat, and when it hit the pit of my stomach, the warm burning spread throughout my body, loosening me up as my inhibitions fell. Both feet had just landed in the center of the dance floor when I felt 2 rough hands grab hold of my hips, spinning me around to meet the face of a handsome stranger. He had pretty green eyes, and they reminded me of Mr. Volkov, but this man's eyes were not nearly as enchanting or troubled for that matter. "Hi, I'm Derek," he yelled over the music, his rough hands still holding onto my hips. "Hi, I'm Juliette," I shouted. "Do you want to go over by the bar, where we can actually hear each other?" Derek leaned in to whisper in my ear so that he would not have to continue our conversation shouting. I nodded to him and shot my best friend a glance to let her know where I was going. I followed him to the corner of the club where the bar was, and we sat on the stools that surrounded the small table. It was quieter in this section of the club. "You look beautiful, Juliette." Derek seemed nice, but he didn't seem like he had any substance to him, although I don't know if that was fair to say after only 5 minutes of knowing each other. He just seemed like the type of guy that definitely did this sort of thing before. "Thank you," I smiled at him politely. Still, it was a compliment and he wasn't bad looking at all. "Can I get you a drink or something?" he offered politely, and I nodded. "Vodka soda?" I suggested. Derek ordered my drink for me, and I looked into the crowd for Ariana. She was happily dancing with some guy. I talked with Derek for a few minutes, having a few sips of my drink here and there, not wanting to get too drunk too fast. And then behind me, I swear I heard a voice call out a familiar name. "Angelo." I immediately turned my head to look behind me. I shouldn't have been surprised. After all, he owned this club. There he was, sitting there in his booth with goons and prostitutes, and as soon as I saw him, he saw me too. Mr. Volkov whispered something to Vlad, and then he gestured towards me. A few moments later, Vlad was walking in my direction. I quickly turned my head back to face Derek, to pretend that I hadn't seen Mr. Volkov tonight, and more importantly, he hadn't seen me. But I had seen him, and he looked good. He always looked amazing. Mr. Volkov was impeccably dressed, and he was undeniably alluring for the devil in the flesh. He even smelled expensive. I felt an abrasive finger tap the back of my shoulder. I couldn't ignore it even if I wanted to. I turned around to face Vlad, one of Mr. Volkov's associates, and I had noticed a favorite one at that. Mr. Volkov would like a word, it will be just a moment. Vlad never smiled even less than Mr. Volkov. It was like it was a part of his job description. He always had a straight face. It was almost comical to try to make him laugh sometimes. I turned to face Derek to explain this interaction. Mr. Volkov is my boss. It'll be just a minute. I smiled at him apologetically, and it seemed like he understood. As I slipped off the bar stool, I pulled the hem of my dress down a bit so I wasn't exposed, and I made eye contact with Mr. Volkov from across the way where he sat at the booth. I felt like I was shrinking again under his gaze. My feet felt planted where they stood. Yet, I managed to move them and I slowly approached his table. As soon as I stood before him, he sent his crowd away with a flick of the wrist. All except for Vlad. Vlad was always around even if he wasn't close. "What are you doing here tonight?" Mr. Volkov asked me, with an air of expectance, as if he were my father or something. Granted, he must have been in his late 20s, or maybe his early 30s at most. I wasn't naive of the looming age gap between us, and he was my boss, but we were not at work right now. He had no hold over me here, even if he did own the place. "I don't think that's any of your business." I crossed my arms over my chest. He smirked a bit. He was again amused by my defiance, and then looked past me. His curled lips turned into a slight frown as his eyes narrowed at Derek. "If that's all, can I go back now?" I rolled my eyes at him. I was exhausted from this unnecessary disturbance. To him? Absolutely not. Mr. Volkov shook his head at me and adjusted the rings on his fingers as if he had all the time in the world to sit here and argue with me. Why not? I raised my voice a bit. I was all but done with this unusual treatment. Mr. Volkov stood up from his booth. Silently, he pushed me aside and stalked over to the bar stool where Derek waited for my return. I quickly followed him over to the seats, unsure of his unpredictable behavior. Mr. Volkov sat down on the stool where I had sat and faced Derek. Derek did everything in his power to ignore the presence of Mr. Volkov, but he was hard to ignore. "Drink it," Mr. Volkov hissed at Derek. He shoved the glass of alcohol I had been drinking from towards Derek. "It's not mine, it's for the lady," Derek insisted, shaking his head frantically. I peered down at the glass in question. I looked closely at the contents of the drink. There had been a stream of fizzy bubbles coming from the bottom of the glass. Mr. Volkov was not through yet. He hadn't been satisfied. Without making a scene, he pulled his gun out of his waistband, tucked it under the table, and pressed it against Derek's kneecap. Then he leaned in closely to the man who had attempted to drug me, and he spoke in a low and menacing tone, his lips a wicked smile. "Drink it." Derek was frozen in his chair, his bottom lip quivered, and he looked like he might wet his pants. He was too scared to reply. He was too scared to move. "You think I won't shoot you right fucking here, in this club? Do you know who the fuck I am?" Mr. Volkov wanted him dead. I could see it in his eyes. He was power-hungry and ravenous at this moment. "Angelo Volkov," Derek stammered. He would not look Mr. Volkov in the eyes, he just kept staring straight ahead. I wasn't sure what he was looking at. "Drink it. All of it. Or I shoot you in your fucking knees and make this entire club watch you bleed out on the floor. The choice is yours." Mr. Volkov waited patiently with a smug smile as he waited for Derek to make his next move. Vlad stepped forward into the scene, making his presence known to Derek, in case he tried to escape. Hesitantly, Derek took the glass into his hands. His face twisted up as he pressed it to his lips. He took one sip, and then immediately began spitting it back. Desperately he tried to force two of his fingers down his throat to make himself throw up. Mr. Volkov wasn't satiated still. As Vlad plucked Derek up from his own vomit, and hauled him off somewhere into the darkness. Mr. Volkov leaned over the bar top and grabbed the bartender by the back of his head. He began smashing the bartender's face off various bottles over and over, until his nose was practically where his left ear was, and he had spit out at least 2 teeth, but those were just the ones I had seen on the table covered in blood. This was the real Angelo Volkov. I had seen the stories come to life, and now I had known that they were not just rumors. Mr. Volkov was a vicious and violent man. "Did you have any of that fucking drink?" Mr. Volkov asked me. His voice had taken a softer tone, one that sounded concerned for my well-being. He looked at me, and he took in my expression of shock. Realizing that he might have traumatized me, he wiped the blood that remained on his hands off onto his pants, like everything was fine now, like that made everything normal. "What the fuck?" I gasped, at the absurdity of it all. The situation had amassed a small crowd, but with one striking glance from Mr. Volkov, they had dispersed like nothing happened at all. "Oh? I'm sorry." Angelo smiled, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Do you want to be drugged, wrapped, and killed?" "Maybe not even in that order." He raised his eyebrows at me and his voice. "And no, it's just that." I began. I drank like half of it. I touched my stomach. I didn't feel strange. I felt okay. I must have not had enough to be affected. "I feel okay." I shrugged my shoulders and went to walk away, but Mr. Volkov grabbed my wrist. "You should go home. I'll take you myself personally," he insisted. "No, really, that's fine." I shook my head. I absolutely did not want Mr. Volkov to know where I lived. "Someone just tried to poison you. How did you get here? Who are you here with?" Mr. Volkov continued, ignoring me. "One of the girls who work for you. She got me the job. We took an Uber." I pointed at her in the crowd of people dancing. "I'll drive you, it's not safe," he pressed on. And suddenly, as I fought to get away from Mr. Volkov, it became harder to fight, like every pull and sway was dragging me down to the ground. My knees felt wobbly, and my head felt dizzy. I looked around the club, and I was seeing double. The tunnel vision began to set in, until everything became hazier and hazier. Instead of fighting to get away, now I was fighting to hold on to Mr. Volkov's arms as I started crashing down. 12 a.m. I had woken up groggy in my own bed. I fumbled around for my phone under the covers, and when I found it, I looked at the time. It was 12 in the morning. I sat up in bed, and I looked around my room for anything that would fill the time gap. I had just been at the club only 30 minutes ago. I was dancing with Ariana. How did I end up here? What happened? I stumbled out of bed, feeling like I had just slept 10 hours straight. I was still in the blue dress that I left to angel dust in. I approached the mirror that hung on my wall, and I looked closely at my face. My makeup was still on. And my heels clunked around, my shoes were still on. I don't usually drink till I black out. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I was so thirsty. I knelt down and unbuckled my heels. They were uncomfortable, so I kicked them across my bedroom floor. I then ventured out of my room towards the kitchen, walking through my living room to get there. And there was Mr. Volkov sitting on my shitty couch. I had absolutely no idea why, or how he got into my fucking apartment. "How the fuck do you know where I live?" I backed away from the man on my couch slowly, as I headed in the direction of the kitchen to equip myself with some sort of weapon to defend. Mr. Volkov got up from his seated position and approached me slowly, with his hands in the air in front of him, appearing as non-threatening as possible. "Your friend told me where you lived because you were incapacitated. You don't remember because somebody tried to drug. I don't know what it was exactly, so you should probably see a doctor," Angelo explained to me in a low voice. It was almost if he were trying to be gentle. A feeling of disgust rose up from my feet to the top of my head and coursed through my body. In that moment, the thought of being drugged left me feeling so violated. The thought of not knowing what happened to me, and only him knowing, left me angry. "I can't believe you just let someone do that to me." I screamed at him. I had never yelled at him before. There had been so many times, and this time it hadn't even been his fault. I was just so irrationally angry and afraid of the unknown. "Nothing happened to you. I beat everyone involved to death. I didn't mean to kill either of them. My intentions were permanent damage, but just before you woke up, Vlad had called and informed me that one of them died in the hospital from their injuries. Mr. Volkov did not look like he felt bad about that. He looked quite pleased with himself. You brought me home? I was confused. He made yet another kind gesture toward me. Immediately, I felt bad about yelling at him. Yes, but now I'm regretting it. Good night, Juliette. You should get some sleep. Mr. Volkov nodded towards me, and then he left without allowing me a reply. I was starting to feel less groggy, so I got the glass of water I was searching for and gulped it down. It was the refreshment that I needed. But I decided that I should get some sleep. Mr. Volkov was right about that. I rolled over in bed, checking my notifications before I went to sleep for the night, for real this time. I had 15 missed calls from Ariana, and about 100 text messages unread from her as well. I rang her quickly to say goodnight, to let her know that I had gotten home safely, and although Mr. Volkov had told me that my friend told him where I had lived, Ariana swore she never spoke to Mr. Volkov that night. She claimed she never would have gone to Angelus that night if she even knew he was at the club. Chapter 4. Juliette's POV. In the days that followed the incident where Mr. Volkov had saved my life and brought me home, he had chosen to back off from his strange behavior. I was both grateful and regretful. I knew that it was for the best. I didn't know what the affection he had for me was about, but I was fully aware of the danger that it could bring to my already fragile life. I didn't need it. I didn't need anybody. I never had before, and I wasn't going to start relying on any man for a damn thing. I had felt regrettable in the way that he had shown parts of himself to me that I was certain few had seen, a glimpse into the softness that he cut off from the world. I shunned him and berated him for saving me, and although he looked at me with eyes devoid of emotion, the absence of a simple goodbye was enough for me to know that my words sunk in his chest. I begun to get into the swing of things at my new job. I had even gotten closer to one of the other dancers. Her stage name was Amber, but her real name was Emily. She was 21 years old. She had dark brown hair and hazel eyes, and she claimed she was stripping to put herself through cosmetology school, which is what she did during the day when she wasn't at Aphrodite. The number one thing I had learned from my best friend about working a job like this was that no matter how nice somebody was to you, you should always keep a wall up just in case. Mr. Volkov entered the club with his posse that included Xander, Vlad, and a man that I hadn't met before. He was absolutely breathtaking, and he shared the same grim smile Mr. Volkov wore. When they stepped foot into the club, hands stopped working, people stopped drinking, conversations slowly died out, and all eyes were on them. God, I know what they say about him, but isn't Mr. Volkov just so fucking gorgeous? Emily was entranced with the Mafia boss as we watched them walk across the floor. They were speaking to each other in hushed tones in Russian. Mr. Volkov's gaze met mine from across the way, and he allowed the contact to linger for a few seconds longer than it needed to last, before him being the one to break it again. He is something, I trailed off. I mean, if he wasn't a murderer, seriously. The things I wouldn't do, it's a short list, Emily chuckled. She adjusted her blue wig atop her short brown hair, fluffing it and adjusting it. Too bad he doesn't talk to the dancers, she added with a frown before strutting off to appease her waiting client. Tonight, I took about 5 clients. My tips were less than impressive even though I had been wearing a brand new outfit tonight. I even practiced a couple of new lap dance moves that Emily taught me. At this point, I was regretting throwing my dignity down the toilet when I accepted this job. I assumed things would be more fast-paced. Now I was faced with the second thoughts of giving Mr. Volkov his check back. I inhaled deeply. You never want to be in the Mafia's debt. I found myself wandering into the dressing room for my break. I took a cigarette out of its pack, nestled in the corner of my locker. I lit the end up with a spark of a lighter, and parked my tired ass on the couch. I took one inhale, holding it in for a few seconds, letting the nicotine's effects relax me, and then I blew it out into the open air. A few puffs in, Emily burst through the door, heels shuffling together so that she wouldn't fall flat on her face. She had a wide smile spread across her face, and she looked like if she didn't spill her guts to me in the next 3 seconds that she might just explode right there. "Oh girl, what's going on?" I laughed, flicking the ash of my cigarette. "Mr. Volkov," she began with a gasp of air. "He just requested me for his meeting." Emily practically shrieked. "Oh my God, is my custom good? Should I change?" She poked at herself in the long mirror on the wall. I felt this uncomfortable twinge in my stomach, like something was twisting and it didn't feel good. It made me sick as if I were going to throw up. I couldn't place it. It wasn't jealousy. I suppose it hurt. It hurt knowing that the special treatment was over. Even from an evil man like him, feeling like you mattered felt nice. I wasn't used to feeling special, and I guess it was short-lived. "You look perfect, Emily." I smiled at her, hiding the feelings of uncertainty that I swallowed. Emily practically tripped over her own feet as she rushed to the VIP section so she could pole dance for Mr. Volkov and the rest of his meeting. I stubbed the end of my cigarette into the ashtray. I found myself possessed as I got up from the couch. I left the dressing room, and I casually watched the balcony from the ground floor all the way up where Mr. Volkov was. He hadn't noticed I was watching him. He was enthralled in paperwork with an unpleasant expression spread across his face. He shouted something audible to the person next to him. He wasn't even watching Emily dance, even though I could tell she had been trying her hardest. I stood there for a few more moments, angrily watching. I wanted to look away, but I simply couldn't. When he noticed me from above, his eyes narrowed, before wasting no time giving Emily every ounce of his attention. He dropped the papers from his hands and discarded them on the table. He leaned in, elbows bent, fingers resting on his chin, as if she were the most interesting and admirable piece of art he'd ever seen. My lips parted. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. The twisting in my stomach returned again. I stomped my pink heel against the black scuffed floor. I pushed past customers as I made my way back to the dressing room to finish my break. I sunk back down into the couch, and I picked up my discarded cigarette, lighting it up once more. I kicked myself over and over in my head for not listening to Ariana, and for allowing the kindness he shared with me to manipulate my emotions for him. It made me see him in a different light, but he was only darkness. I finished the cigarette quickly, in an attempt to relax before I had to return to the floor. I avoided Emily for the rest of the evening. I worked in a different section than she did, and when we passed each other, I would shuffle by in a hurry, even if she looked like she wanted to speak. I knew it wasn't fair. She hadn't done anything to me personally. I just didn't want to hear about how great Mr. Volkov was. I had heard enough about Mr. Volkov, and I had certainly seen enough. I made my decision on what kind of man he truly was. When my shift came to an end, I met Ariana at the lockers. We shared one, because there hadn't been many. I was hoping that Emily wouldn't try to say goodnight to me tonight, but of course she did. Emily removed her blue wig now as she was in her regular clothes. Most of her makeup had been gone to reveal her true self. Emily was a beautiful girl, and part of me wished she wasn't as pretty as she was. She approached from the other side of my opened locker, waiting for me to acknowledge her. "Hey, I haven't really seen you around. Are you mad at me?" she asked me as I slammed my locker closed, the wind knocking her brown hair back. Emily was genuinely bothered by this. I instantly felt like a selfish jerk for letting my emotions get the better of me. "No, I just had a lot of clients tonight," I replied shortly. Emily nodded slowly. The conversation could have been over there. She bought my excuse. But something came over me, and I had to ask the question that I didn't want to know the answer to. "How was the dance with Mr. Volkov?" I inquired. I tried to sound as disinterested as possible, although I knew my tone was laced with secret jealousy. "I thought it went well," Emily frowned at me. "So I tried to pursue him after dance. At first he didn't seem very interested, but towards the end he was captivated by me," she boasted. I wanted to roll my eyes at her, but I didn't. Well? I edged, raising an eyebrow at her, thirsty for the rest of the story. When Emily's proud smile faded away into a slight frown, I felt a bit more relieved. He yelled at me in Russian, and he said he would never involve himself with a dirty stripper such as myself. Emily inhaled sharply as if she might cry as she recounted the interaction with Mr. Volkov. Immediately, my heart sank to my feet. I felt like an idiot for being so mean to her all day. Ariana walked through the door and joined us at the lockers, and she chimed in. He's a dick. I don't know why you even bothered trying, he is just a heartless man. Ariana was considered a veteran here. She had been working here for 2 years, which had been the longest out of any of the dancers. Emily and I waited for Ariana to finish getting unready for the evening, and then we went as a group to collect our tips for the day from Vlad in the office. I wasn't as thrilled as the other girls. I knew mine weren't going to be great, and I felt even worse when I saw how well Ariana and Emily did. We took our earnings, zipped up our jackets, and headed for the back entrance as the club was now closed. Juliette. Vlad called out my name as we pushed on the double doors. Yeah, Vlad. I turned around. I need to see you in the office for a minute, he gestured to the left. My heart pounded in my chest. I thought I was in trouble. I tried to think of something I could have done to break the rules here. I couldn't think of anything. I hadn't worked here long enough to dare mess up. Or was it that I did something to piss off Mr. Volkov, and that he was the one firing me, but he didn't even have the balls to do it himself. He was going to have Vlad do it for him. I'll wait for you in the car. Ariana squeezed my arm, before giving me a loving nod, and then she walked out of the building with Emily. I followed Vlad to the back office. Please don't fire me, Vlad. I was practically all but on my knees begging. I needed this job. Fire you? No, this is about a tip. It was in cash, so I just needed to grab the envelope. I keep the large sums in lockup, Vlad explained to me in broken English as he handed me a white sealed thick envelope. I didn't expect any other tips. I had made shit for money tonight. I opened the envelope and counted the money. It was all crisp, brand new $100 bills, and the total amount packed into that tiny package was $2 grand. I had no doubt believed this money came from Mr. Volkov. Who tipped me this? I demanded to know, putting all the money back in the unmarked envelope. I can't say, have a good night, Juliette, Vlad nodded to me. This time, I decided to take the money. I decided that I wouldn't tell Ariana about it either. After all, I technically didn't know who this money was from. I needed to be able to pay last month's rent, before I could start thinking about this month's, that I was already late. When I got home, I got undressed and into my pajamas. I got into bed, and as I lay there, I couldn't stop thinking about the things Mr. Volkov had said to Emily. I would never such involve myself with a dirty stripper. At first I felt triumphant that he had discarded Emily, but he had done it so harshly, and his choice of words stung. I realized that that was exactly what I was to him, nothing but a dirty stripper. And if he would never be involved with someone like me, then why would extend me kindness, give me gifts, and special treatment? Chapter 5. Juliette's POV. It had been a few weeks since I had seen Mr. Volkov. The last time was when he was on the balcony of Aphrodite with Emily and his goons. I finally overheard a conversation between Vlad and some other man. I hadn't met him before, but I saw him around with Mr. Volkov. This man was tall and tattooed, and he had a vicious smile. He looked at me for a short time, noticing that I was starting at them from across the room. He had the same stormy eyes that Mr. Volkov bore, and his sculpted jawline made me think they might have been distantly related. Between Vlad and the unnamed man, I had heard that Mr. Volkov had gone back to Russia for some time, but he would be back. I thought they had said tonight, but I was unsure when. With Mr. Volkov gone for the past few weeks, that meant the extra trips were gone as well. During my break, I finally got the dreaded call from my landlord. He was finally slapping me with an eviction notice. I couldn't help but break down into tears. I completely ruined my makeup, and I wasn't ashamed if I looked like a toddler at work having a temper tantrum. I sent Ariana a text from my spot in the dressing room. A desperate plea for her to come and find me. A few minutes later, she came through the door to sit beside me, and she took me into her arms as I sobbed. Eviction notice, I managed to choke out between cries and gasps. Juliette. It's not a big deal, okay? You can just stay with me until you get caught up. It'll pick up here. You'll get better shifts, and when the regulars get to know you more, they'll request you more often. I mean, you haven't even had a solo yet. Ariana attempted to cheer me up, but I was too depressed. It wasn't working. I didn't want to stay with her. I loved my best friend, but I didn't want to have to rely on anyone else for anything, especially not a place to live. I'd feel like a burden. I hadn't done that in a very long time. I'll figure something out. I don't want to bother you. I shook my head, wiping my tears away. Juliette, don't be dumb. I'm your best friend, and it's not like you have family. I'm your family. You'll stay with me, Ariana insisted, squishing me into her embrace. So I agreed. I love you, you know. I forced a smile at her. Ariana consoled me till I felt better. She made me smile and laugh, and we talked about what it would be like to live together. At first, I was unsure about living with someone else, but she made it seem like it would be so much fun. She helped me wipe away the remains of the old makeup before drawing a new face on me. After our shift, Ariana called one of her boyfriends over to help me move some of my stuff from my old apartment to her place. Ariana's apartment was much nicer than mine, so I didn't mind being there after all. I didn't have to share a room with Ariana because she had a 3-bedroom, and it was only she who lived there. I was starting to look forward to living with my best friend more and more. As soon as she kicked out the guy she called Kyle, she rolled her eyes after saying goodbye to him. Ariana didn't have serious boyfriends. She was more interested in one-night stands. At least that's what she claimed. But I knew secretly deep down that Ariana thought because of her job, that was all that she could have. I personally wasn't worried about love at the moment, or one-night stands for that matter. Soon we got settled in, relaxing on her pink sofa together. We ordered a pizza and decided to watch a romantic comedy movie. I want to set you up with this guy. Ariana swiped a greasy finger over her phone, and a picture of a handsome man appeared on the screen. He had a few tattoos, nice eyes, and a perfect body to match. Still, I wasn't sure about meeting someone. Even if I did, what would they say if they found out I worked at Aphrodite? Where'd you meet him? I asked her. Tinder, but I'm not really into those tattooed types. Ariana made a disgusted face at me. That was true, Ariana's type was more clean-cut and preppy. Once she mentioned tattoos, I immediately began thinking about Mr. Volkov's tattoos. They were magnificent, the artwork was impressive and detailed. I wondered where they stopped, even if they did at all. What are you daydreaming about? Ariana poked me, catching me staring off into space. Oh, nothing, I giggled. I felt my cheek flushed red, giving away my embarrassment. Is there another man I should know about? She chuckled, pushing me playfully. Have you ever noticed how odd Mr. Volkov acts about me? I didn't want to look her in the eyes. I wanted to talk about him, but I didn't want her to know I was interested in him, because I knew she'd never approve, but she saw right through my facade. No, Juliette, no way, not him, Ariana said, firmly shaking her head. You don't understand the stories, the things I've witnessed him do, the things I've heard in private rooms. Ariana's eyes went wide as she thought about all the instances. If you get involved with him, I won't have any choice but to stay away from you. You'll be too dangerous too, Juliette. Please don't put yourself in any danger, Ariana pleaded with me. Relax. I'm not going to fall in love with a serial killer, nay, I giggle, and her frown disappeared again, and we focused back on the movie. 10 p.m. the next day. At Aphrodite, Ariana and I headed toward the dressing room to get ready for our shift. Emily was already there. She was in the corner with her wig on. She was another girl. Her name was Miranda. Miranda was another new hire like me. The two girls were doing lines of cocaine. I looked away in disgust. All it did was remind me of the person had become. Ariana turned me away from the girls in the corner and faced me towards the mirror so I could apply my makeup. I sat down at one of the vanities and began, when the new hire girl Miranda came over to her and touched my hair. It caught me off guard at first, but then she said, "Wow, your hair is so pretty," she mused with a smile on her face, her eyes bloodshot from the stimulant, my long blonde strands trembling in her fingers. "Thank you." I nodded towards her, shaking my hair out of her fingertips, and returned my attention to my reflection, applying my fake eyelashes to complete my Barbie aesthetic. "Too bad it's not your natural color," Miranda frowned at me. I snapped my neck to give her a dirty. It was in fact my natural color. "Yes. It is," I corrected her. I then went to adjust the string to the bottom piece of my lingerie in the mirror to ensure they wouldn't fall off mid-performance, and I'd be showing everyone everything for free. "I was just complimenting you. You don't have to lie, it's not a big deal, we all dye our hair," Miranda stalked up behind me, continuing the conversation. I turned to face her, my eyes narrowed. "Not me, you druggy bitch," I snapped at her. I stepped out on the floor to start my shirt, not allowing her another word edgewise. I hadn't even spent a full 10 minutes walking across the floor when Vlad approached. I wanted to shrink in front of him. I knew what he was going to say to me next. I knew where he wanted me to go. "Juliette, Calypso room," Vlad raised an eyebrow at me. There were multiple rooms down that hallway, that red glowing hallway. The third room to the left was called the Calypso room, and it was where we had first private dance and our first encounter. I made my own to the Calypso room slowly, walking past the bouncer who guarded the door with a commanding presence. I walked down the hallway, my fists balling up to knock softly against the third door on the left slowly. His voice sounded from the other side of the door. "Come in." Mr. Volkov sat relaxed against the red velvet sofa again, smoking a cigarette as he nursed a glass of vodka. I stood there before him, feeling as though I could disappear in front of him. When his gaze met mine, it felt like he was expecting me to say something. Under his gaze, I felt a heat ignite. I felt his darkness spread through me the longer I stared into his eyes. I writhed under his intimidation as I stood there in my two-piece lingerie set. He did not reply to me. I wondered if I had said the wrong thing. He swirled the vodka around in his glass silently for a few seconds. Then he looked up at me again, and he said, "How have you been since I've been away?" This caught me by surprise. He was asking about my well-being. I stood there truly awkwardly now knowing what answer he was searching for. I could feel the heat return to my cheeks. I was blushing now, and I couldn't find any words to formulate a sentence. "Sit next to me." "I won't hurt you." Mr. Volkov removed the gun from his waistband and placed it beside him on the couch. So he had seen me notice that the first time. I hesitantly sat down next to him. I thought about my father breaking in and stealing from me, and I thought about my eviction notice. These weren't things I wanted to share with my boss. "I've had worse weeks," I summed it up because the truth is I had been worse in the past, and it was probably downhill from here. "How was your trip?" I didn't want to think about my miserable life any longer. I wondered what it was like in Russia. It was tedious and time-consuming. I couldn't wait to get back to this. Mr. Volkov's eyes trailed down my body. In response, as much as I tried to fight it, I felt hot like a searing yearning burn all over my body everywhere he looked at me. The fluster on my face had been apparent, and it made him chuckle, the knowledge of what he was capable of doing to me without even touching me. "Now tell me, what made your days so dreadful?" Was it because you didn't see me?" He pushed, his tattooed fingers tapping my knee gently, my thighs pressed together in response to his touch. I rolled my eyes at him, fighting as best as I could, and I pushed his hand off my knee. "I have a lot to deal with at home, that's all. I don't really think it's your business," I stated, trying to draw some distance between whatever was blossoming here. "If there's ever anything within my power to make things easier for you, say the word," he offered. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to reply to such a gesture by a mafia boss. "Dance for me, Juliette. I can stay a bit longer than this," he instructed me. I began at the end of the room, turning the lights down to a dim. I approached Mr. Volkov with a deliberate sway, my body moving like a dark, mesmerizing current. My intense gaze captured Mr. Volkov, locking him into place as my hips rolled slowly, sensuously, in time with the deep, sultry beat of the music he had chosen. As I danced, the soft lace of my lingerie clung to my curves, accentuating my movements as I teased him with every shift of my body. I brushed against him, just barely enough to make him ache for more. My fingers trailed lightly along his powerful shoulder, the touch electric, leaving a path of heat in their wake. Mr. Volkov's eyes followed my every move, captivated by the fluid, hypnotic grace of my dance. My hands roamed my own body, caressing my flesh as I undulated closer, then retreated with a knowing, playful smirk. Mr. Volkov grabbed my hips, harshly, roughly, and desperately, in response to my tease. He pulled me back into his lap, where I sat, my ass cheeks bare. The only thing separating my flesh from his throbbing erection were his pants, and what thin material they were. "You're tantalizing," he snarled against my skin, his warm breath sent shivers down my spine. Regrettably, I must go. Mr. Volkov broke our intense embrace, yet my heart remained pounding. In the moments when I danced for him, I felt powerful. I was in charge of him. Mr. Volkov threw his head back, finishing his glass of vodka, and then he slammed it down onto the table before his knees, and then he stood up quickly. "I'm going to send an outfit to your home, something I need you to wear for our next encounter, do you understand?" He waited for my reply, and I nodded yes. Although I was unsure as I could ever have been. "Good girl." He began writing me a check, this time for $10,000. My jaw dropped. I pushed the checkbook out of his hands. "No, you have to stop that," I insisted. "Well, you've accepted $2,000, so $2,000 this time as well then." Angelo overpowered me, writing another check for $2,000 addressed to me. "Why are you doing this?" My tone was angry. I was angry that he was being nice to me. It didn't make sense, and I was suspicious. He didn't reply to that question, he just chuckled a little bit at me. "I'll see you around." "I hope that you have brighter days, darling Juliette." Mr. Volkov touched my lip with his thumb softly. His eyes met mine, and for a second I thought he'd kiss me. He broke the contact, pulled away, and disappeared behind me down the hall. He left me alone with my heart racing and my head full of unanswered questions. Chapter 6. Juliette's POV. I declined to tell Ariana about that private dance. In fact, in the weeks that followed, I didn't tell her about any of the private dances that I was doing with Mr. Volkov. I disliked lying to my best friend, it gave me a bad taste in my mouth. But it wasn't like I had sold my soul to the Mafia, or anything. I needed the money, I was swimming in debt. I knew she'd disapprove. I was being safe about it. This way, everyone was happy. Things were getting easier for me. For every private dance that I performed for the devil, he would give $1,000, sometimes even $2 if he were particularly pleased with me that day. I knew this would help me get my apartment back. I hated relying on someone else for a place to live. It wasn't like she made me feel like a burden, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake that feeling. This way, I slowly started to pay back my mother's medical crudely left in my name by my father, as well as his credit card bills. And I would give Ariana some money a little bit each month for rent so I didn't feel as though I was taking advantage of her. Mr. Volkov had begun to show me a side of him that I didn't think anyone had ever seen before. Part of my time was spent dancing for him in the private room, but it was only the smallest portion. We talked. We talked for hours sometimes. As long as he was free, he gave that time to me. I learned more about him. I learned that the man who shared his stormy eyes was his brother. His name was Alexander. He was older than him by a few years. I also learned his mother died while giving birth to him, so he hadn't any memories of her, only stories, and what he knew was that she was a lovely woman and he had wished he could have met her. When I asked about his father, he said he wished not to speak about it. And I honored it, seeing that darkness return to his stormy eyes. It weighed heavily on my chest that I was lying to Ariana about what I was doing. We didn't have secrets with each other. I knew I wouldn't be able to keep up the charade for much longer anyway. I simply told them that there had been an older man, he was handsome and he was wealthy, and that's whom I had all these lucrative private dances with. When I went to get the mail that day, I received a package. It was from Mr. Volkov. I had expected this. I tore through the package and grabbed the note, quickly glancing it once over, and then hiding it so that Ariana wouldn't see it. Angel. Mr. Volkov. Angel? I didn't understand the comment until I opened the contents of the box. I crumpled up the note and stuffed it into the pocket of my sweatpants. I brought the package inside. It was pretty big and it was heavy. I snagged a pair of scissors from the cup on the kitchen island and ripped through the parcel. It was a gorgeous white lace bodysuit. I looked closer at the detailing. It had real Swarovski crystals etched into it. Behind it were a pair of angel wings and some red-bottomed heels. I gasped at the contents of the box before running upstairs to shove everything under the bed, as I thought I heard Ariana coming downstairs. Thankfully, she was on the phone with someone, which meant she was distracted, so I successfully managed to sneak by her. I couldn't believe he had just gifted me something so expensive, just for a private dance. I was certain of one thing: I couldn't let Ariana see this. I couldn't explain any of it. There were a few hours of free time between work, and Ariana and I decided to fill that void by going shopping for some stage clothes. We both had different aesthetics, so we'd be shopping at different stores. Ariana rocked the country look, even though truthfully she hated everything about it, down to the music and the accent. I didn't mind my Barbie gimmick, it had grown on me. Maybe it had something to do with the praise it got me from Mr. Volkov. I liked that the clothes were pink, and they were generally feminine and cute. I didn't care for the persona I had to put on, the dim-witted blonde. I shuffled through the shoes. I picked out a pair of pink boots and light pink heels. I also stumbled upon some clothes that I could wear outside of work, so I grabbed a skirt and a shirt. Ariana was discouraged by her options within the style of clothes she had to wear for work. "Does this look hillbilly enough?" Ariana scoffed. She held up some sexy overall lingerie. I couldn't hold in my laughter. It looked extremely difficult to get into, with all the straps and buckles. "God, that's some messed up shit," I laughed. "Hey, don't kink shame," Ariana teased me. On the car ride back, Ariana had some news for me. So I overheard Xander. He was saying he's going to give a solo dance to either you or Miranda for tomorrow. I had been working at Aphrodite for over a month. I was more than angry that I had competed with Miranda, that druggy bitch, for my solo dance. I needed to be the one to get it. The solo dances were on the main stage. All eyes on you, that's where you made the most money. Not to be a bitch, but she doesn't even have a gimmick. Why aren't they just giving it to me? I scoffed. Well, Xander said because I'm the senior girl, he'd call me first with the decision since I'll have to train them. He said he'd let me know around 7, so like an hour. Ariana smiled at me. For the next hour, I was so nervous. I couldn't stop bothering her, to the point where she was starting to get noticeably annoyed with me. Once her phone finally rang, I practically jumped onto Ariana's lap trying to overhear the conversation, so she skillfully pushed me off of her and ran to her bedroom, locking me out. A few moments later, she came out with a frown on her face, which told me I wasn't chosen for the solo dance. "I'm sorry, Juliette," Ariana gave me an apologetic smile. "It's okay, there'll be other chances," I nodded understandingly, but I was furious that little coked-up bitch got the solo instead of me. "Yeah, there'll be other chances for that stupid skank Miranda because you got the solo." Ariana's frown turned out to be fake as she revealed that I had won the solo spot. I threw my arms around her neck, too thrilled to even be mad. This was just another step in the right direction to having my independence back. "Come on, grab your stuff. You'll have to come in early with me so you can work on your routine." At Aphrodite. I was excited once I arrived under the neon lights of the club. I wanted to boast that I got the solo. I got ready in the dressing room, hoping to see Miranda. Ariana talked with some of the girls that were working the floor. As I was finishing up, I heard some arguing coming from down the hall. I wasn't trying to listen in, but it was too loud to ignore. Mr. Volkov is not taking any visitors right now. Xander yelled in broken English. You can tell Angelo, I never want to see him again. Who the fuck throws somebody out of their house and leaves in a car with another woman? The woman screamed at an innocent Xander, and then I heard a door slam. I continued to finish my makeup, applying a highlighter to the highest points of my face. It had been rumored that Mr. Volkov would not be seen in public with the same woman twice. It was also rumored that he was more of a savage lover. No matter how dangerous it was to be in his presence, no matter the evil he had done or the cruel things he could say, women loved to be around him. His charm and allure were magnetic. He was darkness, he was sin, he was temptation, and to be with him was to be exhilarated. I personally thought his line of work was despicable and godless. I had no idea how a person like him went to sleep at night. I daydreamed about the day that I was completely debt-free, and I didn't have to play Mafia's favorite stripper with him anymore. A few moments later, Xander peeked his head into the dressing room to see if I was making any progress, and he looked exasperated. What was that about, Jax? I asked him innocently, as if I hadn't a clue of the devil Mr. Volkov was. Mr. Volkov can't seem to keep his whores at home. Xander shook his head, and then bit the end of his pen as he scanned his clipboard. Apparently, I laughed sarcastically. Head to the stage in the basement, Xander instructed me. In the hallway, I met Ariana. Her green eyes went wide when she saw my outfit. She loved it. It was the outfit Mr. Volkov had sent. I stepped up on the stage and approached the shiny metal pole. I went over a few different moves and techniques with Ariana. She taught me some choreography and tricks. Once I had rehearsed several times, I felt like I had learned the routine. Ariana put on some ambient music and I began. I strutted from the end of the stage. I noticed Mr. Volkov had appeared in the crowd. His presence made me nervous, but I did not falter under his gaze, even though he looked absolutely furious. I continued my routine through his displease. Mr. Volkov pushed Xander, almost knocking him to the ground. He climbed right up on the stage and demanded that the music be stopped. The crowd murmured. What the fuck do you think you're doing? Mr. Volkov whispered in my ear. He grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully tight as he dragged me back to the dressing room. That was the first time he had acknowledged me in front of people, and he absolutely lost his mind. What the fuck are you doing? Let me go. I snatched my wrist away from him, rubbing it gently with my other hand. What do you think you're doing? Wearing this. Mr. Volkov gestured to the outfit he had sent me. You told me to. I yelled at him. His expression darkened as he stepped closer to me, forcing me against the wall with nowhere to run. Mr. Volkov slammed the door shut and locked it. Watch how the fuck you speak to me, you insufferable bitch. He grabbed my throat, squeezing tightly. Don't touch me, that, I choked out, looking up into his dark green eyes. They were stormy like angry seas. I specifically said you're to wear this for me, not for every vile creature that just wants to put their hands on, Mr. Volkov whispered in my ear. He tightened his grip on my throat, but I couldn't say anything. His grip was too strong. I couldn't breathe. I could feel my face get hot. I looked at him and I could see the reflection of my own terror in his eyes. Once he felt like I was thoroughly traumatized by him, he let me go. I rubbed the sides of my neck as I caught my breath. You're insane, I furrowed my brow at him. I'm not a forgiving man. I do not give many chances, so go change, and we'll try this again. Mr. Volkov was practically laughing at me. And Juliette? I looked up at him, waiting for another sarcastic remark or another ridiculous demand. I'll touch you however I want. He slammed the door shut. I despised the way he treated me. I had called it special treatment, but I was wrong. It was not special. He viewed me as if I were some kind of doll, and he owned me like I was a piece of property. And for some reason, he had the ego of a god, viewing himself as if he were higher up than those men who paid for my time. I discarded the outfit he gave me on the couch angrily. I didn't want to give it another thought. I slipped into the new outfit I had bought with Ariana. Some thigh-high latex light pink boots with a matching bodysuit. I liked it because it had lace, it had a deep cut down the chest, and it held my breasts just right. I returned to the stage in the outfit that appeased Mr. Volkov, and I practiced my solo return a few times. He watched me more intensely each time I began again. He would whisper things to Xander every few minutes, and then he would meet my eyes and nod in approval or subtly shake his head if he didn't like something. The worst part of this whole thing was that he was my boss, so I had to please him whether I wanted to or not. He knew that, and he loved it. Xander informed me I'd be performing for the crowd at 10 tomorrow night after I finished practice. I nodded with a smile. I was excited to do my first solo dance. I met Ariana in the corner. She had a proud smile on her face like a sister. "That was amazing, you're so graceful," Ariana beamed. "Thank you, it's all thanks to you," I hugged her quickly. Ariana's smile faded slowly. Her eyes shifted from side to side, and she looked past me where Mr. Volkov stood with Xander. "Juliette, why did Mr. Volkov grab you like that?" Ariana asked, an air of concern in her voice. "Are you okay?" He was a big fan of the Barbie look. He didn't like the angel look for me. I hated lying to her right to her face, but she seemed satisfied with my answer and the conversation moved on. I headed back to the dressing room to have a smoke before I went on the floor, but once I got there, I noticed the outfit Mr. Volkov had gotten me was missing from the couch. I frantically rummaged and tore through all the clothes all over the floor and on the racks, but I couldn't find it anywhere, not the wings, the bodysuit, or the shoes. I was beginning to freak out. I thought about how angry he was when he had seen me wear that out, and now I had lost it. I decided to try to avoid Mr. Volkov as best as I could, but once I stepped out on the floor I found my costume. Miranda stole it. I stormed up to that blue-haired freak. "I think that cocaine has permanently damaged your brain." I crossed my arms over my chest. Miranda flipped her tacky wig at me as she turned to face me, a rotten smile plastered on her face. "I finally found my gimmick, it looks much better on me." Miranda spun around in my costume. I was overcome with anger. I had enough of this girl. I shoved her and she stumbled a few feet away. Before she could retaliate, "Girls," Vlad stepped in the middle of us, as a good bouncer would. "Vlad, she fucking stole my costume." I pointed at Miranda, my eyes narrowing at her. "This is my costume," Miranda lied through her yellow-stained teeth. "I will kick your fucking ass." I grabbed at her and Vlad pulled me back. "What is going on here?" Mr. Volkov's voice spoke from behind me. Mr. Volkov assessed the situation himself. He went from stoic to completely irate when he noticed what Miranda had been wearing. I was nothing short of smug, and it was apparent on my face. "Not only are you a whore, but you are a thief." Mr. Volkov shook his head at Miranda in disapproval of her character. Miranda's eyes pooled with tears as she faced Mr. Volkov's wrath. For a moment, I felt proud of my little victory against her. But the words he spoke to her lingered in my mind. "Not only are you a whore." He had called Emily a dirty stripper and Miranda a whore. That's what he really thought of us, and that's what he really thought of me too. "You're fired," Mr. Volkov shouted. He was only standing about a foot away from the poor girl. Her lips parted only to gasp, but took it as a sign of defiance. "Don't speak. Just remove the costume and leave." Mr. Volkov pointed to the back entrance of Aphrodite. Miranda didn't even dare glance in my direction, under the gaze of Angelo. I stared at her with a smirk as she walked away. Mr. Volkov dismissed Vlad and bestowed his attention upon me. "Juliette, I will have you now go get changed." Mr. Volkov leaned down, whispering in my ear. In response to his demands, I gave him a dirty look. "I'll take Jules then if Juliette doesn't want to cooperate." Mr. Volkov laughed a bit. I swallowed my pride and realized I was at work. It didn't matter how much I disliked him, this was my job. Once I got to the dressing room, Miranda was already gone, and my costume was waiting for me where I had originally left it on the couch. I couldn't deny that this was a beautiful outfit, and these shoes, they were so expensive. I couldn't believe he had just gifted them to a dirty stripper. Once I was satisfied with my appearance, I psyched myself up to strip for this sadistic psycho and strutted onto the floor. Chapter 7. Juliette's POV. I locked the door to the Calypso room behind me. I took in the atmosphere of the room. It had red lighting and red velvet furniture. The room exuded sex. It demanded lust. Mr. Volkov was wearing a black short-sleeved button-up shirt this time. I could see more of his tattoos this time, and they ran all the way up his arms. He left his shirt open again, leaving much more on display, an intricate working of artwork inked into his flesh. His dark hair was perfectly styled, gelled, slicked back, and one strand of hair fell loosely out of place. It wisped against his forehead. He sat relaxed on the red velvet couch, with a glass of vodka balanced on his knee, supported by a few fingers. I bit my lip as I stood before him, my back pressed to the door. I waited for him to acknowledge me. He glanced up at me, and he gestured for me to come closer to him, so I did, slowly. His stormy eyes were a bit clearer today. "It's you, Juliette," he murmured. He stood up, and he took my hand into his own gently, and he spun me around in the room. I laughed at how silly he was being. I assumed the alcohol was getting to him now. "What's me?" I asked with a slight giggle. Mr. Volkov sat down on the couch again, and he pulled me down into his lap by my hips. "Have a drink with me," Angelo began, pouring me a glass of champagne from the ice bucket. I didn't say a word. I just allowed him to command the moment. It was his private dance after all. He chose to use this time to stare at me, as if he were admiring a beautiful painting on the wall. "Is it true what they say about you?" I asked him, seductively sipping the glass of champagne. "I don't know, what is it that they are saying now?" Angelo chuckled a bit to himself. "It's just crazy stories really, right?" I smiled at him softly, expecting him to meet me with a soft expression, but instead, he furrowed his brows, his lips turned into a slight frown, and darkness fell over his face. "You should believe them. I'm probably worse than they say." Angelo couldn't help but laugh like this was all a joke. I swallowed hard, noticing the gun sticking out of his waistband. Was he really serious about not hurting me? Could I trust him? "My time is yours for now. Dance for me." He lit up a cigarette and then reached for the remote for the music and pressed play. Mr. Volkov rarely ever smiled, but the corners of his mouth would turn up ever so slightly every time I danced for him. He viciously threw my hips back against his lap. Every time my ass met his groin, I felt his erection growing harder and harder. "Fuck," I heard him mutter under his breath. Mr. Volkov spun me around and pulled me onto his lap. The way he stared at me as I bounced up and down on him made me forget just how much of the devil he was, and allowed me to focus on just how sexy he was. I allowed his curious hands to explore the bits of my exposed skin. "Enough!" He reached for the remote, abruptly turning off the music, but he never removed his hands from my waist, forcing me to stay on his lap. Suddenly, the doorknob began to jiggle. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought this was the Bermuda room," Penelope, one of my fellow dancers, gasped as she accidentally unlocked the wrong room. Her sun-kissed tanned face went pale, and she looked sick when she saw who she had interrupted. Mr. Volkov's expression quickly shifted from half-pleasant to immediate anger. He almost hurled me off of his lap onto the couch before he stormed the room, approaching the poor girl. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Volkov," Penelope stammered. Tears fell from her cheeks as she cowered in his presence. "You're sorry? I don't even know your name." Mr. Volkov towered over her. He knew he was intimidating, and he noticeably seemed to enjoy it. "It's Penelope," she practically squeaked as she backed up a few paces from Mr. Volkov, who just advanced on her till she was up against a wall. "Penelope, tell me, how hard is it being so dense as well as being a whore for money?" Mr. Volkov looked down upon Penelope like an angry god would look down upon a mortal, with disdain. I swallowed hard. I felt bad for Penelope. She didn't mean to interrupt us. But then he used that word again, whore. I felt like an idiot to allow myself to begin to fall for his charms. Every time I danced for him, the heat that ignited within me was too much to bear. I didn't want to put it out, I wanted it to spread. And that was dangerous. Get out. Before I fire you, Mr. Volkov barked at her right in her face. Penelope turned on her heels and ran out of the Calypso room sobbing. Mr. Volkov buttoned up his shirt silently, still disturbed by Penelope's interruption. He came back to the couch, and he focused his attention on me again. Tomorrow you will accompany me. I have a wedding to go to and you will be my date, Mr. Volkov began. I will send a dress for you, and you will be ready by 8 in the evening. He never asked people anything, he just made choices for you. And why would I do that? I raised an eyebrow at him, and he cracked a smile at my defiance. Because I told you to do it, and you will do it. I want you there, he insisted, and then he leaned in closer to me, his hand resting on the side of my neck. No. I don't want you. I shook my head at him, baffled that he thought he could just control me. I stood up and headed for the door. I needed to put distance between us, physically and emotionally. Mr. Volkov pursued me, pushing me up against the wall with his broad chest. His muscular arms came to pin my arms above my head, and there I stared into his captivating storm, trapped. You will want me, and when you do, you will beg for me, Juliette, Mr. Volkov whispered against my ear seductively. One of his hands held both of my wrists, as the other ran down my body slowly, gripping my flesh harder and tighter, pulling on the fabric of my lingerie. He pressed his erection, which was apparent through his pants, against my thigh. The longer he clawed at my body, the more desperation for him became too much to bear. I began struggling against him, frantic to free myself from his embrace. The more I struggled against him, the more primal he became with me, as if he liked it. I will never beg for you, Mr. Volkov. I couldn't break free from his grip, so instead I broke our gaze. I couldn't be strong under it. He did not accept that. He lifted my jaw with his finger to look me in his eyes. You can call me Angelo when we are alone, Angel, he offered. I shuddered at the extension of this. This meant we had been growing closer, and I was fully aware of what that meant. Dance for me. He released me and sat back down on the couch. He waited impatiently for me to obey, as if he hadn't just ravished me seconds ago. I had been still frozen against the wall, as he confidently glided across the room and took his place on the sofa again. The dance lasted 20 minutes or so, before he again abruptly interrupted me and ended it. Angelo stood up and commanded me. I have to go. I'll see you tomorrow at 8. You're not the boss of me outside work. I crossed my arms over my chest. Let me ask you something, Juliette. Do you like working here? Angelo raised an eyebrow at me. I knew exactly where this was going. You can't be serious, Angelo. I practically stomped my $2,000 heel on the ground. See you tomorrow at 8, he smirked at me as he grabbed his gun off the table and tucked it carefully into his waistband, concealing it with his shirt. I hate the way you treat me. Why do you even want me there? I'm just some dirty stripper. I had enough of this treatment. I wasn't going to be toyed with any longer. I didn't care if people didn't talk to Angelo Volkov like that. I was going to. And I just did. Although immediately after I did, I regretted it. I braced myself for what he might say next. Try to be more agreeable tomorrow night. Angelo just laughed at my defiance, as if I weren't really a threat to him at all. Then he left the room, so I could have my tantrum all alone. Who the fuck did he think was? He couldn't just boss me around outside of work, manipulating me with the threat of being fired. What the hell would I tell Ariana? I didn't want to spend another second longer than necessary with a man who thought of me as some nasty common streetwalker. My job wasn't who I was. I had no idea how someone who has never had sex before in their entire life was a whore, but someone who womanized wasn't. Near 2 in the morning at the end of my shift, I met Ariana in the dressing room. We caught up about our day, berating customers and talking about how ready to go home we were. As we removed our makeup, we sat in front of the vanities. Slipping out of my costume felt like a relief today. When I got put on sweatpants, they felt as plush as a blanket compared to the scratchy lace I had on for hours. I scratched at my arms trying to remove some of the body glitter plastered all over my exposed skin. I can't wait to shower, I yawned exhausted. Me too, but somehow no matter how many wipes I use, this eyeliner never wants to come off, Ariana complained as she scrubbed her face. Tirelessly, we made our way across the parking lot to Ariana's car. The parking lot was dimly lit, only a few street posts still glowing now. From behind the club in the alley, shouting erupted. I nudged to Ariana, and she shook her head at me. "Don't get involved, Juliette," she insisted, but still I dragged her with me toward the sounds I heard. Quietly, we crept behind the club, and we peered behind the alley. I said, "I just want to talk to you, and then you try to run away? Cowardice must run in your spineless family." A hauntingly familiar voice spoke in a menacing tone. It was just bright enough in the alley to make out shadows of faces. It was Mr. Volkov, and he was holding a knife to a man's throat. "I told you. There was no partner. I don't know anything about my father's work. Please? I'm begging you," the man whimpered in the darkness, barely able to choke out his words from the pressure of the blade against his throat. Ariana had run away in fear at this point. I couldn't move, I stood there frozen. "Wrong answer." "Thanks for playing anyways though," Angelo spat against the man's face. The man began to scream, but it was slowly cut out as Angelo slit his throat. The blood began to pour out onto the ground, onto the man's chest, onto Angelo. Angelo didn't seem to mind. He was entranced as he did this. He took his knife and plugged it into the man's chest several times, with cool smile spread across his wicked lips. I jumped as I felt two hands on my back. They spun me around. It was Ariana. She had pulled the car up. Like a zombie, I got into the passenger seat in a trance, numb to what I had just seen. Chapter 8. Juliette's POV. I was anxious all night. I had tossed and turned till the sun came up. I couldn't think of anything except the way Angelo smiled in the alley last night. I was dreading attending the wedding with him. I had no idea how I would pull this off with Ariana, and I had no idea how I could stomach spending 1 minute alone with him now. I wasn't looking forward to whatever relationship that was beginning to blossom with him, regardless of whether I wanted it or not. Most of the lying legwork was done for me, as Ariana had a date tonight, and he was conveniently picking her up at 7. This gave me just barely enough time to be able to pull myself together in secrecy before a car was sent to pick me up. The only part one had to do was hide the evidence or the dress Mr. Volkov was sending me. "I'm going to take a shower. Can you do my hair in those curls you do for your act?" Ariana asked from the bathroom. I ran off to my bedroom with the white box and slid it underneath the bed for a quick second. "Yeah?" I called out to her. This double life was giving me a headache. As soon as I heard the water going, I knew it was safe to open the package. My eyes almost popped out of my skull when I tore the tissue paper away and the fabric was revealed, the price tag gently laying right on top. $60,000. I almost choked as I took out the red-bottomed shoes at the bottom of the package. I picked up a tiny white piece of paper that was tucked inside the pair of shoes. It had a few words scribbled onto it in black ink. "I'm not so bad after all, huh?" I read the note aloud quietly. It almost made me crack a smile. I'm sure he had no idea what I had seen him do at 2 in the morning last night. I jammed everything carefully back into the box, as I heard footsteps getting louder and louder towards my bedroom door. Once I had fixed Ariana up and given her a pretty decent pep talk for her date, I was left alone for the next hour. I didn't feel as glamorous as I thought once I had put on the dress and the shoes, nor did I feel any better once I had my hair and makeup done. I felt so sick and so nervous, I threw up. I didn't look right. I looked like a doll. I looked like a kept woman, kept by a man nonetheless. I had never had such mixed feelings about a person before. I knew he was evil, I knew he was cruel, and I knew exactly how he felt about me, or at least what I did for work. Yet he went out of his way to do these things for me, to spend money on me, to protect me. Why me? My phone vibrated around 7:45. Mr. Volkov was reminding me that he would be arriving in 15 minutes and for me to be ready for him. He also reminded me to be pleasant and agreeable tonight, as my job depended on it. I was physically ready when the time came, but I was nowhere near mentally ready. I had assumed he was going to send a driver with a car, but instead it was just him driving his black Escalade, no scary Russian mobsters with him, besides himself. There he was, suit and tie, leaning up against his car, his eyes angrily fixated on his Rolex until they were fixated on me. "You're lucky the world stops for me when I tell it to, Juliette. You're 5 minutes late." Mr. Volkov didn't seem upset though, in fact he had a slight smile on his face. "It's 8 o'clock exactly," I raised an eyebrow at him. "If I say you're late, then you're late. Get in the car." Angelo opened the passenger door for me. I scowled at him and slid inside. We rode in complete silence. He made no effort to speak to me. Instead, he would just glance at me every so often as if I was painting or something, until we arrived at a very large gate. "Who is getting married?" I asked him as the iron gate opened slowly. "Nobody," Angelo answered flatly. "Then why am I here?" I crossed my arms, crossed my chest, confused. Little did I know, it was not a wedding or even a regular event that Mr. Volkov insisted I attend as his date. It was his very own birthday party. All eyes were on us as we entered the lobby of the large mansion. I grabbed onto his arm anxiously, as if he were an anchor in uncharted waters. Everyone here looked expensive and deadly at the same time, men and women alike. I couldn't fathom why he'd bring me here. "Why didn't you tell me it was your birthday?" I whispered against his shoulder as that was all I could reach, even on these heels, as we made our way through the swarm of people all wanting his attention. "Would it have made a difference to you?" He replied. I met at least 25 different people in the span of about a half hour. My head was dizzy already, and I could barely follow the conversations because they were half in Russian and half in English. I could see the way people respected Angelo, but also feared him. Although all the attention was on him, and everybody here seemed to love him as family, Angelo looked distant. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Angelo placed his hand on the small of my back possessively. He introduced me to a man that I had seen with him before. He had the same cut jawline, deep eyes and dark hair that Angelo sported, but this man had stitches resting on his cheekbone that gave him an edge. "Alec, this is my friend, Juliette. Juliette, this is my brother, Alexander," Angelo introduced me to his brother. He had called me his friend, yet his arm snaked around my waist, and the word friend was only spoken after a slight pause. Alec looked at me as if he'd seen me before, but he couldn't quite place where. I squinted my eyes at him a bit, and he smirked in response, not a friendly smirk, but an amused smirk, as if I was some animal in the cage at a zoo placed there for his own enjoyment. "So you found her?" He spoke to Angelo in a thick Russian accent. Angelo began speaking in Russian, and they began to argue till it escalated to shoving. "This is a mistake," Alex spit at the ground, and turned his back on Angelo, disappearing into the crowd of people that had surrounded them. Angelo took off in a rage, dragging me by the wrist with him down a long, dimly lit hallway. "What the fuck did that creepy asshole mean by that, Angelo?" I crossed my arms over my chest. Angelo looked at me crossly for even uttering the words, "None of your fucking business." "This is all fucking wrong." Angelo forcefully pushed me up against the wall. He slammed his fists inches away from my face. He was fighting with something inside, something he wasn't ready to share. The only thing he could express was violence. After last night, his rage terrified me. "Don't touch me, psycho." I reached out, shoving him as hard as I could. It was enough that he gave way so I could slip through his arms. I ran down the hall aimlessly. I wasn't sure where I'd go, but anywhere was better than alone with him. I found myself faced with 2 double doors. Angelo grabbed me by the waist and pulled me into his body. He picked me up, holding me against his embrace as I struggled to free myself. "Never go into that room," he hissed angrily. He tossed me over his shoulder with ease as I thrashed around. "Put me down. You're insane. I want to go home." I kept screaming, but I knew it was useless. Nobody here would offer me help. Nobody here would defy Angelo. He carried me upstairs away from the crowd of people. My heart pounded with uncertainty. The way he had grabbed me before I attempted to enter that room was terrifying. He was angry. He was bringing me away from the others. I trembled over the thoughts of what he might do. He brought me to his bedroom. The first thing I noticed was the wall-length painting of himself on the wall. He had been sitting on a throne of sorts, clutching chains that held 2 Doberman pinschers, like the narcissist he was. "Fucking sit on the bed." Angelo dropped me down on the bed carelessly, and then he began pacing his expansive bedroom, his fingers resting gently on his chin like he was processing something very important. "I'm not having sex with you," I laughed. "Nice picture, you look like a real asshole," I mocked him. He abruptly stopped pacing and looked at me with a dark expression, and I realized I had crossed the line. "Look at me." Angelo grabbed my face and throat roughly. "Shut the fuck up, you're so damn beautiful, but every time you talk I want to cut your fucking tongue out," he snarled. "Take me home," I demanded as I attempted to pry his hands off my throat. Angelo pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose and shut his eyes, staying silent, lips pursed together. "Answer me." I grabbed his arm and he didn't move. He just held his gun with one hand, the other still pressed to his forehead. "Why is your brother upset?" I kept hurling questions at him, because his silence was uncomfortable. "He's always been upset that after my father's passing, I became boss instead of him, considering he is older than me," Angelo chuckled, and this angered me. How could he be so calm? How could he laugh? "Fuck you, what did he say about me?" I folded my arms over my chest. "It's my birthday, can't you just give me a break?" He laughed. I knew I was not going to get my answer, not tonight, maybe not ever, at least not from Angelo. "Happy birthday," I rolled my eyes at him. "How old are you anyway?" I squinted my eyes at him. He carefully tucked his gun into his waistband. Angelo removed his jacket, unbuttoned a few of the top buttons on his white shirt, and sat down in the chair next to the bed. 29, he ran his fingers through his hair. "Do you know how old I am?" I laughed at the salacious age gap. "Old enough to act like a whore at my club. I read your file, 18, Juliette Larson. I knew your name before I asked you," Angelo chuckled. "Oh fuck you," I scoffed at him. This time my defiance didn't elicit a chuckle. He was angry. "You wear the dress I buy for you so you'll act the way I tell you to. You fucking understand me?" Angelo raised his voice at me. "Why did you buy me this dress? It was $60,000. I screamed at him like I was angry. I was. I couldn't understand why he would do this for some dirty stripper. I only thought it could have been for malicious reasons. "Do you like it?" Angelo softened his expression. He made his first attempts at being gentle with me. "Why did you?" I began before he interrupted me. "Do you like it?" he repeated. "Yes," I whispered. "I just wanted to show you I can be kind. I know you've heard things about me." Angelo touched my lower lip with his thumb, and my heart began to race as he got closer to me. "Are they true?" I studied his dark eyes. I knew they were. I saw them firsthand. "Yes, I'm sure they are all true, and many more things that you'll never know about." Angelo ran his fingers through my hair, admiring me. "Why me?" "I'm a stripper, you hate them," I scoffed. "You're right, it is time to take you home." He cleared his throat, pulling away from me abruptly. I was growing tired of never getting an answer to the question that kept eating away at my mind: why me? Once we arrived outside Ariana's apartment complex, he turned off the car and he looked at me for a while. I tried not to make eye contact with him. I just wanted to escape him. "Keep the dress and the shoes, do whatever you want with them," Angelo still acting distant. "I saw you," I said sullenly, finally looking him in the face. "You saw me what?" he asked with a suspicious tone. An angry expression spread across his face. I saw you last night when I was done with my shift in the alley with that man. I saw what you did to him. You try to make people think you aren't evil, but you are. I don't want any of your gifts. Stay away from me. I squinted my eyes at him, and Angelo smiled ever so slightly. I can't do that, Juliette. I'll be seeing you. Good night. Mr. Volkov's expression was kind and his voice was gentle. Truly, that was the scariest part of it. I left the car without another word. Back at Ariana's apartment. 2 a.m. I quietly snuck in, hoping not to wake her up if she was already home from her date. I closed the door softly and turned on the kitchen light. I swiftly took off my heels, so they wouldn't make clicking noises against the floor, and slipped into my bedroom, successfully concealing my double life. Chapter 9. Juliette's POV. It was an odd balance that I maintained. I had to hide Mr. Volkov's command over me from Ariana, and Mr. Volkov never really paid me much attention at work unless we were in a private dance. When he'd walk by in passing, he'd nod towards me. Maybe he allowed his gaze to linger longer than necessary, but that was it. We did a lot of speaking when we were alone, and I didn't mind it. Mr. Volkov genuinely seemed like he was interested in what I had to say, but I still hadn't figured out why. Apart from being a criminal, he was established. He was a 30-year-old man, and I was just a high school dropout. I was barely 18, and I didn't have a damn thing to offer the world. I despised how easy such an evil person could be to talk to. Like everyone else who had met this man, I would admit he was charming. I puffed on a cigarette as I went through the emails on my phone from bill collectors, and I went through the 10 new voicemails left on my phone from insurance agencies. I wanted to burst out crying, but I decided against it. I knew it wouldn't change anything but instead make me feel like an incapable adult. I reminded myself things would get better. They were already starting to pick up at work, but somehow I figured I'd never be able to dig myself out of this hole. Jules, that regular of yours is here again, looking for you. He won't take no for an answer. Xander peeked his head in the door of the dressing room. His voice was all sing-song-like because he knew I didn't like this man. He told me his name was Matt, but many of our clients lied about their names. He was a 32-year-old accountant, awfully quiet but pretty handsy, a big tipper, but when he did say something it was usually creepy and unwarranted as hell. I had my eye on this customer at all times. I sucked it up considering this would most likely be my last dance of the night, but I could feel something was off. After the dance was over, Matt didn't want me to leave tonight. I could offer you some private work, back at my place, Jules, Matt offered as I dismounted from his lap. My patience was wearing thin now. It was almost 2 a.m, and that meant my aloof, flirtatious personality of Jules was disappearing, and Juliette was beginning to show through as I caught myself rolling my eyes at the customer. I don't do that, but if you're looking for company, I can direct you to some of Mr. Volkov's other ventures. I suggested his prostitution ring and waved goodbye to him. Well, really, I'd like to just see you outside of this place, Jules. You still won't even tell me your name. Matt chased after me towards the dressing room. I looked around for Vlad or any of the other bouncers, but I assumed they were all in the office getting the filing done for the night. Hey, employees only in the dressing room, get lost, creep, closing time. Xander whipped the dressing room door open, kicking Matt to the curb. I gave him a fake apologetic smile, even though I wasn't sorry at all, I was just relieved. I changed into a form-fitting white midriff tank top, paired with gray sweatpants rolled up at the top, and a pair of fuzzy boots, to stay warm on my mile walk to Ariana's apartment because it wasn't her night to work. I grabbed my pink zip-up hoodie out of my locker and slid my arms tirelessly through them. You should really invest in some type of protection, Juliette, Emily suggested to me. Emily worked the only shift that I didn't have in common with Ariana, so we became pretty close fast, being 2 new hires and around the same age. Emily was only 21, and I was 18, going to be 19 in the next few months. Oh, you saw that? I attempted to laugh it off, but Emily frowned at me. In our line of work, it's something we have to take very seriously, but I didn't really want to have to think about adding a stalker to the list of problems I have already. Seriously, you should be careful, that's why I always bring this. Emily flashed a pink taser from her purse. Thanks, Em. I appreciate the concern, but I'm sure he's harmless. I'll see you tomorrow night. I hugged her goodnight and I left through the back double doors for the night. It was dark out in the parking lot. It was only lit by 2 street lamps, and most of the lot was vacant now since it was closing time. The only cars left were Mr. Volkov black Suburban and the rest of the employees' cars. I made my way across the damp lot over to the bus stop, when I was startled by a familiar voice in the darkness behind me, followed by a pair of footsteps. Jules, wait. I turned around and it was Matt. I began to panic. I knew the doors would be locked from the inside now. You need to leave me alone. My name is not Jules and I am not at work right now. I shouted, hoping someone would hear me and come see what was going on, but it seemed nobody was going to hear my cries. Don't be like that. We've spent every single night together for the past 2 weeks. I feel like I know you and I want you to know me. Matt grabbed my arm. Are you alone? Do you need a ride home? You shouldn't have to walk. I shoved him and he became more insistent till it turned into a struggle. Get off me, fucking weirdo. I screamed. I stomped on his foot with my boot and managed to get away, running towards the front of Aphrodite where the entrance was. Mr. Volkov, Vlad, and Xander were just leaving. I ran smack into Mr. Volkov's chest. He grabbed my waist, catching me. What are you doing? Running around in the street this late? Angelo laughed and I began sobbing. Vlad lit up a cigar and groaned as he turned his attention to Xander. Please, you have to help me, this guy is following me. I shouted in a panic. Juliette, who? Angelo zipped my hoodie up for me as I was shivering. I sobbed against his chest for a second. Between the tears in my cloudy eyes, I saw him reach for a knife. When Matt finally caught up to me, he was shocked to see who he had come face to face with. Everybody with a pair of eyes had seen Mr. Volkov's face plastered on the news from the United States to China. He was the most notorious mobster, always managing to get himself off the hook and avoid prison time. Vlad grabbed Matt by the arm, holding him still so he couldn't get away. Angelo's soft expression turned vicious, and he pushed me to the side a bit and approached Matt, leaving him cowering. Angelo placed the edge of the blade against Matt's throat. He slammed his eyes closed and began to sob and shake. Vlad, please escort Juliette to my car so I can ensure she gets home safe. Angelo nodded to me, and Vlad grabbed my arm and took me away from the situation so Mr. Volkov could take care of him. Vlad put me into the back seat of the Suburban and locked me inside. All the windows were blacked out so it was difficult to see what was happening across the dimly lit lot. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to see. What's going to happen? What is he going to do? I asked Vlad in a panic, desperately trying to see out the windows. What he does best, Vlad chuckled sinisterly from the driver's seat, and then cleared his throat upon seeing how frightened I was through the mirror. It's better if you don't look, okay? Let's talk about something else. Vlad tried to distract me as I heard the blood-curdling screams from outside. I put my hands over my ears and shut my eyes. Angelo whipped the back door open, scaring the piss out of me. I screamed. He said something I didn't understand to Vlad in Russian, and Vlad left the car, slamming the door shut and leaving me alone with Angelo. He grabbed both my wrists with one hand and put his other hand over my mouth. Shish, it's just me, and that's exactly who I was scared of even more than Matt. Would you like to come home with me tonight, Juliette? Angelo whispered against my neck, running his hands up my chest until his fingers rested around my throat like a necklace. No thank you, Angelo. My heart was racing, and I bit my lip. This only excited him further. You're so polite, what's wrong? Are you not happy I killed him for you? I had no choice. Angelo turned my jaw to face him, his lips inches away from mine. Why do I want to kiss him right now? What the hell is wrong with me? Your eyes are even better than I dreamed they'd be. Angelo took my hair out of my messy bun and adjusted it to his liking. Stop, take me home. I shoved his hands away. My heart was beating so hard I was scared he could hear it. How nervous do I make you? He licked his lower lip like a predator, thirsting over his prey. I rolled my eyes and he chuckled in response and got into the driver's seat. I stayed in the back seat. I hated how much I was attracted to him. As bad as I knew he was, there was something undeniably sexy about the way he protected me. The fact that he'd kill someone for me was so devastating crazy. I decided to get in the front seat with him on my own accord. He didn't say a single word, and he didn't smile as he drove away from the parking lot. I assumed he was having Vlad clean up his mess. The car ride was painfully quiet. Thank you, I guess. I looked over at him. He was already looking at me. If you were mine, nobody would ever dare do anything to hurt you. Angelo focused back on the road. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I just fantasized about what it would be like to be his until we arrived at Ariana's apartment. I made sure he parked down the street so she wouldn't see me with him. Juliette. I looked over at him, and he grabbed me by the throat, pulling me into him. He kissed my cheek over and over. I couldn't stop my breathing from becoming erratic, my stomach from twisting, the heartbeat between my legs. He trailed kisses down my neck. I grabbed onto the chains that hung around his neck as I tried to catch my breath. Tell me to stop and I will. He let out a breathy laugh against my skin that gave me chills. I didn't want him to stop, so I didn't say anything. He began sucking on my neck, biting, kissing harder, till I let a few moans slip through my parted lips. In response, he growled against me like an animal, leaving his mark against my neck, claiming his ownership. When he pulled away, I was left a hot mess. I wanted more, but the truth was I was innocent to this sort of thing, to all of it, to kissing, to biting, to sex. I had no time for personal satisfaction growing up, and I never needed another person. Another person never needed me either, and Angelo desperately needed me. I just couldn't understand why. Good night, Juliette. I'll be seeing you. Angelo opened the car door for me like a gentleman, as if he didn't just maul me like a bear to claim his territory. Good night, Angelo. I touched his hand and he grabbed my fingertips, resisting as I left the car. I had to come up with something to tell Ariana, because when I noticed the hickey that rested upon my neck, I knew she would notice it too, and questions would be asked. I didn't think Angelo Volkov knew how to behave the right way, and to him, the way he acted was the right way, because nobody dared tell him no. I resisted the lust, the desire, it grew with each interaction with Had. I was aware of the dangers that lingered around his lifestyle, not only his lifestyle but around him. He was dangerous himself. Chapter 10. Juliette's POV. I became like a vampire, a creature of the night, sleeping most of the day away, waking up at night to go to work, to do something unholy to get by. I had gotten used to the job mostly, but I had never gotten used to the way Mr. Volkov treated me and the way I had to lie to Ariana. It was 6 o'clock at night when I finally rolled out of bed. I slipped the hair tie out of my ponytail, adjusted my long golden hair in the mirror, and began plucking at the impurities in my face. Right away the hickey from Mr. Volkov caught my eye. I froze where I stood as the act replayed in my mind. I jumped back into reality when Ariana appeared in my doorway. I really hope you didn't lose your virginity to some creep from the club, Ariana yawned, giving me a motherly look of disapproval. I laughed nervously. I had gotten a ride home from that older wealthy man I had been seeing, and things got a little heated. I rifled through my drawers for my concealer and covered hickey up quickly, hoping I could shift the conversation just as fast. Well, be safe, use condoms, and get ready for work, you're going to make me late. Ariana poked me playfully with a smile and closed the door softly behind her. I exhaled a sigh of relief, but the sick feeling didn't leave my stomach. I felt horrible for lying to Ariana about who I had been going out at night with. I felt like I was living some sort of double life, and I didn't have these types of secrets with her. She was truly like my only family. This was the one thing she asked of me, and I felt like I was betraying her, and I was rubbing it in her face. I used every ounce of my strength to resist the magnetism of Angelo Volkov. There was a reason I was told to stay away. The man was the definition of pure evil. I had seen it with my own 2 eyes, and the possibility was always there that he would turn on me as a lion turns on a zookeeper. It would only end badly for me. I walked into the dressing room that night with Ariana. Emily was there talking to Penelope, Penelope was a girl that had interrupted my private dance with Mr. Volkov. I felt like I was going to throw up. What if she mentioned something in front of Ariana? "Hey Juliette, nay," Penelope greeted us with a wave. "So much for being inconspicuous." Ariana waved and began getting ready at her station as Penelope approached me. I noticed most of the girls were fascinated by the Mafia lifestyle, some like Emily, not even caring about the dangers that came with it. And that's exactly what Penelope wanted to gush about. "Is it scary dancing for them?" "I've never done it." There was a slight hint of jealousy in her voice. I immediately shut the conversation down. Mr. Volkov would prefer if I didn't speak about it. I cut her off quickly and made my way out on the floor. I couldn't risk Ariana finding out. This was my first solo dance, all eyes would be on me, and all profits too. I had been practicing tirelessly with Ariana to get the moves right. My long blonde hair fell over my shoulders. My breasts were practically doing magic with how lifted they were in my pastel pink bustier top, and my heels clicked nervously against the black floor as I waited for the curtain to open. There he was in the back circle booth, surrounded by his mob, but his focus was on me, as if we were the only two people in the room. I made my name known that night, as I was desperate to be in my own place again. The reflective silver pole was my knight in shining armor, back to independence. Mr. Volkov and his mob left in a hurry, disappearing down a guarded hall. I continued working my shift. "What's your name?" A man passing by smiled at me as I walked by. I twirled around and batted my eyelashes at him. "Jules, what's your name?" I leaned in and adjusted his tie for him. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched him slip his wedding ring off his finger and tuck it into his pocket. Before I could begin, Vlad approached me. "Sorry to interrupt, but Jules is very popular tonight, and some VIP guests would like her entertainment. Come with me." This was a demand, not a request. I looked at the man apologetically. However, I wasn't. As much as I liked the money, he was married and he had no business being here. "I think it would be best if you just went home to your wife," I smirked at him, as he was speechless that I had called him out, and followed Vlad to the guarded hallway that Angelo and his mafia went down during my solo act. This was a strict off-limits area, for everybody. "I've never been down here before," I whispered to Vlad. "Nobody comes down here unless you're invited down here," he explained in his thick accent. It almost made him sound like a supervillain. "So who invited me?" I asked like a naive idiot. I knew who invited me here, but Vlad didn't answer, even though he knew I wasn't that clueless. The hallway was long, there were a few shut and locked doors concealing private rooms, and at the very end there was a red velvet curtain and another armed guard waiting. Vlad knocked on the door before the curtain. He nodded to me, leaving me standing there waiting. Angelo opened the door with a cold expression on his face and pulled me inside. He shut the door behind me. This room was set up like a fancy bedroom. I wondered what the rest of the rooms down this secret hallway looked like. I assumed they were for the members to have relations with prostitutes or do illicit substances behind closed doors. He sat me down on the bed. He didn't speak to me, he just went into the closet, took out a white bag, and placed it on the bed next to me. "I can't have you dressing like a streetwalker in my private club. Put the dress on." His tone was sharp and irritable, as if I hadn't been moving quickly enough for him. I took the dress out of the bag, expecting it to be some club dress, but it wasn't. It was beautiful, elegant, yet sexy. He stared at me, watching my every move. "Turn around," I snapped at him. "You're 90% naked in my presence at all times. Now you want to get modest." Angelo chuckled and turned around, giving me a sliver of privacy. I slipped into the black lacy dress and adjusted my hair over my shoulders in the mirror as I checked out my new look. "I'm done." I cleared my throat, and he spun around, gesturing for me to come close for him to have a good look at me. "Stunning, now sit." "I have to inform you of the rules." Mr. Volkov patted the spot next to him on the bed gently, and I sat down in its place. "You will never breath a fucking word about anything you see behind the velvet curtain. Not to your whore friends, not to your family, not to a soul, or I will rip every single tooth out of your mouth. Do you understand, pretty?" Mr. Volkov brushed my hair behind my ear in an attempt to soothe me after his harsh threat. Why do you want me there if not to dance? I looked down at my lap. Making eye contact with him was difficult. It felt like his eyes pierced mine. I want your company. You will fawn over me. You will sit on my lap. You will do as I say. You will not speak unless you're spoken to. Angelo lifted my head so I'd be forced to be faced with his gaze. I bit my lower lip and he furrowed his brow. I'm not a prostitute. If you want company like that, you know where to find it. I scoffed at his demands. He grabbed my thigh, squeezing tight, and leaned into my neck. I don't need to pay for sex if I wanted to. I could fuck your little friend, Emma or whatever her name is. His words made me grind my teeth. I wanted to punch him. He didn't even know her name. However, I knew I had to swallow my pride and my dignity. He wasn't the type of man you wanted to assault, and he was my boss. Give me your phone. Outsiders aren't allowed phones inside. Mr. Volkov held out his hand and I hesitantly dropped my phone into it. I followed Mr. Volkov through the velvet curtain. The room within was filled with smoke, shouting, and laughter. This was the section exclusively for mob members. Some wore wedding bands but no wives were in sight, just prostitutes in their arms. People sat at booths playing poker and smoking cigars, and some sat at the bar drinking away their sins and snorting the pain away. My arm hooked into Mr. Volkov. All eyes were on us as we walked through the crowds of people. They all parted to make way for us. Some whispered, but everyone stared. Don't be nervous, you're safe with me, Angelo reminded me. He must have noticed my head was spinning. Lucky. Thank you for everything you did for my son's birthday. He really had a great time. I can't believe you rented out the whole zoo for him. A man in a suit puffing on a fat cigar laughed with Angelo, referring to him as Lucky. Of course, I'd love to stay and chat, but my beautiful date and I have a meeting to attend, Angelo nodded to me. As we made our way to the table, I immediately recognized the faces that awaited us. One was Vlad, one was Xander. I knew them well from the club, and one belonged to Alexander Volkov, Angelo's brother. Mr. Volkov spoke in Russian to his closest associates. Alexander would look at me from time to time with a displeased expression on his face. I could sense he really did not like me. I didn't follow the conversation. In fact, I didn't follow any of the conversations that were going on in this section of the club because they were all in Russian. Mr. Volkov grew annoyed after a few minutes of being seated that I was not on his lap as he asked. He patted his thigh, and I climbed into his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. Alexander spoke to him, seeming like he was telling a story, but Angelo wouldn't take his eyes off me. Alexander snapped his fingers in Angelo's face, and Angelo grabbed his hand, twisting it. Why do they call you Lucky? I asked him, interrupting Alexander. Angelo didn't mind that, but Alexander's expression told me that he did. Because 12 men have tried to kill me, none have been successful, Angelo boasted. Alexander rolled his eyes subtly. Vlad and Xander presented papers to Mr. Volkov, and he read through each one swiftly. An older man came to our table very politely, asking for our drink orders. When it came to me, I was shocked that I was even asked, as I'm not a part of their circle. She'll have champagne, Angelo spoke for me. He held my waist, tracing the lines of the lace with his fingers. Chills ran down my spine as he did this. Do I make you nervous, Juliette? He whispered in my ear, so low and so close that only I could hear him. I felt his warm breath against my neck. I could have melted into a puddle right there. Every bad thought about him went out the window. He reached in his own whiskey glass for an ice cube and ran it across my neck, wiping away the concealer that hid his mark on my neck. Alexander cleared his throat, wanting Angelo's attention. Angelo didn't even glance in his direction. Alexander stood up, shouting in Russian, pointing at me, and then violently kicking his chair over. Angelo chuckled at his brother's tantrum. Vlad looked at Angelo, shaking his head in disapproval, so he dismissed both Vlad and Xander. I'll give you a minute to cool off, Angelo laughed. I sat in my own chair so that he could get up, but he disappeared into the bathroom, leaving me alone with a rather pissed-off Alec. Alexander stared at me in complete and utter silence. A scowl settled on his face. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a butcher knife. Why do you hate me? I blurted out. He raised his eyebrow at me, surprised I dared speak to him at all. Why do you think that? He lit a cigarette, taking a long drag before blowing it across the table at my face. I coughed, waving my arms in front of me, clearing the air. Because every time you see me, you fight with Mr. Volkov. I know it's about me. I crossed my arms over my chest, throwing some attitude his way. Fearless, aren't you? He leaned over the table. Yes, I squinted at him, leaning in as well. But when my brother comes around, you cower like a scared little girl. You should be afraid, but not just of him. You're not going to ruin everything my family has worked for these past 100 years. You will not be a fucking distraction to our life. Alexander slammed his fist down on the table. Before I could open my mouth to retort, Mr. Volkov had returned. I hated the way that Alexander was correct, but I wasn't going to allow myself to be bullied by these men any longer. If he thought I was going to be a distraction to Mr. Volkov and their work, well then, I was going to be the biggest distraction he had ever witnessed. I greeted Mr. Volkov with a wide smile, wrapping my arms around his neck promptly as soon as he sat down, taking my place on his knee again. He pressed his forehead to mine, looking longingly into my eyes. You were gone for so long. I ran my long acrylic nail down the buttons of his shirt. Miss me, Juliette? He slid his hand around my back, resting gently on my thigh. I peeked at Alexander from the corner of my eye, with my back turned to him to ensure he was pissed. Alexander slammed his glass of whiskey down on the table, catching our attention. As I was saying, the guns are going to arrive Friday. We need at least 6 men there, he began again, taking away Mr. Volkov's attention. The conversation quickly shifted to being spoken in their native tongue when it became more sensitive. I bounced around on his lap, casually moving as if I was just getting comfortable, my ass slowly grinding against his lap. He gripped my thigh hard, sinking his fingers into my skin as his erection quickly grew against me. I rested my head against his shoulder, running my finger down his chest. I kissed his neck, sending him into a frenzy. He finished his alcohol and discarded the glass onto the table. Alexander was in the middle of talking to him about a deal when he simply picked me up over his shoulder without a word. What are you doing? I almost giggled at the scene he was making. Everybody was staring at us now. I'm going to punish you, don't ever tease me, Mr. Volkov laughed. He took me to an elevator and pressed the button for the penthouse. I didn't see much of the penthouse as he took me straight to his bedroom to slam me down on his bed. I let you break every rule tonight, and you still wanted to tease me. Angelo unbuckled his Gucci belt while I sat wide-eyed on the bed, nervously playing with the hem of my dress. Give me your wrists. He took the leather belt and hooked my wrists into it, but not without a struggle, guiding me to the bed frame and latching my restraints to the bars. His eyes devoured my body once he had me at his mercy. What are you going to do? I bit my lower lip as I watched him unbutton the rest of the buttons on his shirt to reveal his sculpted body, covered in dark tattoos. I cannot decide if I want to pleasure you or if I want to punish you, so I think I'll do both. Angelo ran his hands down my body, slowly separating my thighs. He squeezed them hard, causing me to gasp. He smiled at my little whimper. He slid my dress up with 2 fingers and slid my thong down with his teeth. My heart was racing. I moved around in my restraints, which made him chuckle. He leaned over on me, pressing 1 finger to my lips. Open your fucking mouth, beautiful. Angelo's eyes studied my every move. I opened my mouth ajar and he slowly slipped in his finger. I wrapped my lips around it, locking eyes with him. He just about melted for me. He took his finger out of my mouth and began to explore between my legs, gently moving past my folds. He immediately found my clit. I let out a quiet moan. Such a good girl. Angelo wrapped his inked hand around my throat as he played with my clit with the other hand. He wouldn't stop until my legs were shaking. He held them open for me. You're not done until I say you're done. He bit my inner thigh and replaced his finger with his tongue. I struggled in my restraints as the pleasure built up to orgasm. I wanted to grab his hair. I wanted to scream. I was gasping for air, and then he stopped. I was almost angry. Hell, I was pissed. I glared at him, giving him the most "what the fuck" expression that I could. Don't tease me, Juliette, Angelo laughed as he took the belt off my wrists. Fuck you, I want to go back to my shift. I scoffed, trying to hide my flushed cheeks as I fixed my dress. Your shift is over, the club is closed now. Angelo checked his watch. Suddenly panic set in. The club couldn't be closed and my shift couldn't be over. Ariana was supposed to drive me home tonight. Angelo, I'm not supposed to be with you. What have you done? I pulled on the roots of my hair gently. Have something to eat with us. I'll drive you home. It's so late, nobody will notice, he insisted. I was silent, I was internally panicking. I can't play this game anymore. My reality isn't your reality. I have to play by my rules. I need to go home. I furrowed my brow at him, and he nodded his head. The car ride was mostly quiet besides the static of the radio. I noticed Angelo kept sniffling. He had a runny nose and his hands were shaky. In the very corners of his nostrils, embedded in the cracks, stuck white powder. Chapter 11. Juliette's POV. As I snuck into Ariana's apartment, I decided tonight I hated myself. I mentally beat myself up for a million things at once. For lying to my best friend, the only person in the world who truly loved me, not being strong enough to defy my lust, and allowing that murderous psychopath to eat me out. The worst part about it is, I'd probably do it again if I had the chance, even though I'm sure he was high out of his mind. Skillfully, I snuck through the door, trying to be as quiet as possible so I wouldn't wake her up. The lights were off and I didn't hear the TV, those were good signs. I tiptoed through the rooms and turned on the kitchen light. I was startled to see Ariana sitting there in the dark at the small table. She looked upset, like she had been crying for hours. Is everything okay? I asked her, not remembering what I was still wearing. Juliette? Where did you get that dress? Ariana asked me. I began before she interrupted me. I saw him drop you off, Ariana began to cry. I tried to tell you it wasn't worth it, the gifts, the lifestyle, it's glamorous but it's lethal. You're playing a dangerous game. I love you, so I warned you over and over, Ariana sobbed. Ariana, you don't understand, I shook my head. No, I do understand, he's gorgeous, I get it, and you're in the honeymoon phase, but I told you, Juliette, I can't be involved with any of that, you have to leave. Ariana looked away. The frustration and rage of the situation I was lured into, and the damage it had caused me, had finally bubbled to the surface, and with that, so did the sadness I had been hiding. The tears welled up in the corners of my eyes, and I didn't hold back. I didn't try to keep them at bay, I let them come crashing down my face. I allowed the tears to wash away the makeup I had worn, because I hated who I was in it. I desperately needed her to understand my situation. Ariana, I gasped. Please just listen. I didn't have a choice, I sobbed. I begged her to understand, but that wasn't entirely true either. I didn't exactly stop him from touching me. You always have a choice, Juliette, and you chose wrong. I love you, I hope he doesn't destroy. It's enough that I work at his club, and attend some of his others as a patron, but to be involved with the mob personally? I can't risk that. I'm sorry, Juliette. I hope you change your mind as well and see the dangers you're putting yourself into. Ariana hugged me, and she looked at me for a long time. Her lips opened and then closed, as if she wanted to say something, but she changed her mind. And then she ran off to her bedroom. I chased after her, but she had locked her door. I called out to her, but she refused to answer. Instead, all I heard was her speakers blasting music. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I started pulling at the ends of my hair softly, as the rage turned to tears. I sat there on Ariana's apartment floor for a short time, just crying, and waiting to see if she would come out. But she never did. I stood up and I dusted off my dress, the stupid dress that had ruined my only friendship, that had made my best friend hate me. I sulked into the bedroom Ariana had kindly offered to me. I looked around the room for a few minutes, taking in the surroundings, as it would be the last time I saw them. And then I began packing a bag of my clothes. I didn't have a car, and I wasn't able to afford an Uber, so I decided that I would hop on a bus. My reality became more grim as I sat on the hard plastic yellow seat. I realized my last resort would be my father. I had to hope he was clean, because it was the only option. It was early in the morning. I watched the nightlife live as the bus made each stop. Drunk people got on and some got off. Eventually, I was the last person on the bus because my father lived at the edge of town in the shitty area. I had never hated Mr. Volkov more than I did right in this moment. I was forced to comfort my past, and I was forced to beg him for help. I knew I had another option. I couldn't tell which one was worse. I could call Mr. Volkov and ask him for help. I practically scoffed at the idea of stooping that low. As I stepped off the bus, I was distraught. I could feel in my bones that this was a mistake as soon as my feet hit the sidewalk. I had no place to go. I was alone. A part of me was hoping my father would see how broken his daughter truly was and finally pull through for her. I pulled a hoodie over my dress, wanting to be less exposed to the elements and the dark shadows of strangers looming on the corners of the street. I knocked on an old beaten-down apartment door. We lost the house after my mother died, and we could never catch up on rent, so we moved around a lot, never really having a permanent home after she died. This was the last address I had for my father. I hadn't called him Dad in years, just James. A strung-out, malnourished woman answered the door. She was wearing ratty clothes. I entered the apartment, carefully inspecting where I stepped, so as not to step on any stray needles. The apartment was filthy. My father had been using it again. I almost wanted to leave right away, but I knew I had to at least ask before I slept on the sidewalk. "Juliette, what the fuck do you want?" My father appeared from around the corner. My father, James Larson. He looked horrible. I hadn't seen him in person in quite a long time now. His hair was all gray, and he had grown a very unkempt salt and pepper beard. His shirt was covered in various stains, and his pants looked 2 sizes too small for him considering the gut he had grown from beer, presumably after looking about the apartment. "I just wanted to see if I could sleep here. I got evicted, and I have nowhere else to go." My voice was weak. I begged him, hoping and pleading my old father was in there somewhere. "Well, do you have any money? You can sleep on the couch." My father held out his hand and I sighed. "Oh, come on, I don't want her here. Isn't she a stripper?" The skinny, drugged-out woman looked at me and spoke words dripping with disdain and hypocrisy, as if I was the dirty one. I glanced down at her arm that she flailed in the air. It was decorated with track marks from years of heroin abuse. "Excuse me, junkie?" I shoved her, which led to a physical altercation. My father didn't even intervene as this woman punched me in the eye. Finally, I managed to grab the lamp off the table and hit her with it in an attempt to get her off of my body. My father eventually grabbed his sorry excuse for a girlfriend to make sure she was okay. I picked myself off the floor, touching my nose as it throbbed. There was blood all over my fingertips. "Juliette, get the fuck out!" My father shouted at me before he slammed the door in my face. I didn't cry this time. He hadn't made me cry in a long time. I wasn't shocked or surprised when he didn't come to my rescue or check on me. I didn't care when he didn't care I was all alone anymore. I had been alone for so long that I knew I would be okay, although right now I couldn't feel a thing. I was numb as I stepped out onto the sidewalk to plan my next move. I decided I would take the last bus to Aphrodite. Ariana had taught me a secret back entrance that was always unlocked. I snuck into the back of the club and got into the dressing room. I went into the bathroom, flipped the light on, cleaned off the rest of the dried blood around my nose and lips, and splashed cold water over my eye, which was already starting to slightly bruise. I just stared at myself in the mirror for a few minutes without blinking, without thinking. I felt like I melted into the image I saw in the reflection. I exhaled hard, slamming my eyes shut. I turned off the bathroom light and slept on the couch in the dressing room. It could have been worse. Chapter 12. Valentine's Pov. It was an average morning. At 8, I rolled out of bed. I took a shower. I had a light breakfast, hearty but healthy. I dressed. I opted for a black suit, a complete Armani with complimentary shoes. I walked through a few spritzes of a discontinued French cologne, and I slipped my gun into my waistband. Vladimir Chekhovsky, Vlad as he liked to be called, rolled up in my all-black Escalade. I was lucky enough that I had grown so close to my associate over the years. It was nice having someone that I was certain I could rely on. Vlad had become more than just my right-hand man but a best friend. The car ride to the club was silent. I had no interest in watching the same scenery I see every day on this tedious ride. I could only think about how I lost every bit of control with Juliette. I clenched my fists, thinking of the way she writhed in my sheets. She was a defiant, sexy little thing, and she needed to be tamed even if she didn't want to be. I embraced the fight she'd bring. This brought me to think about my brother. He didn't approve of Juliette. She was a stripper and she was quite young in comparison to myself. And more so, he found her personality to be bratty, which she was, but I didn't mind. It was as if Vlad could read my thoughts. I had a scowl across my face as I normally did when I had to think about my brother. These days there were nothing but rifts between us, even as I did everything to draw the family closer. Vlad brought up Alec's tantrum from last night. Alec is just a little pussy, I chuckled to myself. I couldn't believe my own brother thought I did not have a handle on what I doing. I wasn't worried about his concerns. Does Juliette know? Vlad inquired. No, let's keep it that way, she's not ready yet. I shook my head. I thought about how poorly Juliette had been reacting lately. I settled into my office chair, and I began going over the bills for the club, then the income reports, then the employee reviews, and of course the files again. My phone began to ring. It was early in the morning, and I wasn't ready to be bothered yet, so I let it go to voicemail and focused on my work. The ringing began again, it was incessant, and texts also came through. Finally, I glanced at my phone. I groaned seeing the name on the screen. It was Eva. She hadn't been anyone special to me. I had an arrangement with her, and we slept together, but I had never made any promises to her. I ended things with her, and she's been trying to chase me down ever since, clearly not able to hold up her end of the arrangement. She had come to the club not too long ago. She was yelling and screaming at Xander about me. Now she had been calling me during work hours. She probably was high on a bender. I declined the call once more and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Not even a few minutes after I was interrupted again by Vlad. You're going to want to deal with this. Vlad's expression was bashful, almost as if he were surprised. I was curious about what sparked this look in my stoic friend. I followed him down the hall to the stripper's dressing room, and I switched on the light switch. Before me was Juliette. She was asleep on the couch, and appeared that she had a black eye, but I wasn't sure if it was just the shadows of the room. I approached her quietly, and I inspected her face. My blood boiled, I wanted answers. I jolted her awake, and she jumped with a gasp, her tired eyes opening wide quickly as she assessed the situation. Come on, girl. Get up, Juliette. I coaxed her upright onto the couch. Who the fuck did this to you? I demanded. Juliette screamed, immediately turning on me. Get off me. She lunged towards me. I hate you. She hissed at me. Never touch me again. She shrieked and bolted for the door, as if I had been the one who punched her in the face. I caught her, grabbed her waist, and pulled her back into my body. She balled up her fists, beating on my chest over and over till I was sure she was sore. I pushed her back onto the couch and held her down by her shoulders so that she couldn't run away again. How did you get the black eye, Juliette? I questioned her. She turned her face away from me and pursed her lips, refusing to answer. Why are you here, Juliette? I demanded. This time I raised my voice, I growing tired of her childish game. She snapped her neck at me. Because of you, it's all really because of you. I fucking hate you. I should have never gone out with you, fuck you. Juliette glared at me as she resisted the hold that I had on her. Oh, what the fuck did I do? I scoffed at her. I rolled my eyes and foolishly let go of her. Instantly she attacked me. She lunged at me, grabbing my gun out of my waist, and she held it and aimed towards me. I was quite impressed actually, but nevertheless. I figured I had no choice but to allow Vlad to subdue her with a sedative now. Her eyes closed slowly, and the gun slipped out of her fingers and fell to the floor with a loud clunk. I caught her as she lost her balance with one arm. I supported her, and with the other hand, I scooped up my gun, replacing it into my waistband. Then I carried her limp body to the elevator. Once the metal doors shut, I pressed the button for the penthouse. I switched on some of the lights, giving the apartment some life. I brought Juliette into my bedroom here. This wasn't where I stayed typically, but when I worked long nights, it was convenient. I laid her in my bed, and I covered her in a position that I thought she'd be comfortable in. As I watched her lay there was no doubt in my mind that she was the girl from my dream. The same dream I had every night, single night for years. It was her. Juliette Larson. I continued admiring her, her blonde hair cascading over the pillows. She was perfect. She was everything I had wanted desperately for so long, everything I had been waiting for years. Juliette began to twitch, opening her heavy blue eyes slowly. I approached the side of the bed, sitting beside her body. Relax, the sedative is still in your body. I touched her lip and she turned her face away to the pillow. You drugged me, she looked at me crossly, her speech a bit slurred. Tell me who did that to your face. I ran my hand up her thigh and she watched me do so as if she was supervising. My father's junkie girlfriend. When Ariana kicked me out because she caught me out with you, I went to his apartment to see if he would let me stay there, and there was a fight. Juliette scowled. She attempted to get up in bed but failed and fell back down. He did nothing to protect you? I asked her angrily. No, he just tossed me out. I didn't expect him to. If you knew him, you'd know how he works. Juliette laughed morbidly, her speech returning to normal. Don't worry about it. I'll be okay. I don't want any help from the Mafia. She gave me a dirty look. I'm going to do something that's clearly never been done for you. I shook my head at her. What's that, Angelo? Drug me? Make my best friend hate me? Oh wait. Juliette looked away, sarcasm covering the pain in her voice. I'm going to take care of you, Juliette. I won't tolerate you being harmed. I touched the bruise surrounding her beautiful aquamarine eyes, and this time she didn't move away, but her attitude quickly changed as it did. Do you know Ariana is never going to speak to me again because she caught me with you? She's my only friend, my only family. Juliette broke down. I left her alone to come to her realizations. There were no kind words I could offer her. I didn't plan on returning her back to her simple life. I had her in my grasp now, and I wasn't going to let her go. I would let her cry it out, fight it out, whatever she needed to cope. My next move involved her father. I was enraged as I thought about how her own father could stand there and see his young helpless daughter get hurt, and then simply toss her to the side like trash. I was going to find that shitty apartment, and I was going to strangle him, and that bitch he allowed to put hands on my Juliette. Are you sure this is a good idea, boss? This is exactly what Alec was talking about. Vlad shook his head when I asked him to find the address of Juliette's father's place. Don't fucking talk to me about Alec, just get it done, I demanded. I decided I would go and check on Juliette's progress. She appeared to have tired herself out from crying, or the drug in her body. I sat in the chair in the corner of my bedroom watching her sleep. She was quite tranquil and stunning, especially when she was quiet. Not a bitchy glare, or a bratty comment in sight. I watched as to ensure she did not wake up and enter the living room. I wasn't ready for her to see my intentions, as I kept paintings and sculptures of her likeness there. It was almost seductive, her laying there asleep without any thoughts in her head, without an attitude, just pure innocence. For a stripper, she radiated innocence. I wanted nothing more than to take care of her, so she never had to do those things again. I hated seeing her with other men at the club. I always wanted to rip their throats out. I hated to sound cliché, but she didn't seem like those other dancers, she just seemed lost. Why am I here, Angelo? Juliette turned over, rubbing her pretty blue eyes. You obviously needed somewhere to sleep because of me, so why don't you stay with me? I'll take care of you. I moved to sit beside her on the bed, and she moved away, putting distance between us. I despised how much space she insisted on putting between us. The closer I got to her, the farther away she pushed from me. I don't need you to take care of me, she furrowed her brows at me, and this irritated me even more. Where will you go? You can't just sleep at my club. I attempted to reason with her, but I was growing irritated. I was starting to realize she was impossible. I don't want to live with you. Juliette looked away from me, as if she were scared to see how I'd react to that. Then you'll stay with me. I'll get your things moved to my estate. For now, you'll sleep here in the penthouse till your shift. You'll be working for me all night. I have a meeting I want you in. I touched her lower lip with my thumb and she pushed my hand away. Chapter 13. Juliette's POV. I was left alone in Angelo's penthouse, in his bedroom. I was wrapped up in his blanket in his scent. It was faint, but it was still there. I hadn't seen much of the penthouse before. I'd only been here once. I did my best to not remember my time spent in his bedroom with my legs spread apart. I had come to regret it. I was groggy, but I managed to get out of his bed. I looked around at his bedroom. It didn't seem like it was a person's bedroom. It wasn't personal. He must not have spent much time here. I wanted nothing more than to leave. He was nothing but a disgusting hypocrite and a vicious killer. I felt like crying again when I remembered that I had exhausted all my options. I thought about calling Ariana, so I began searching for my phone. I desperately rummaged through the blankets and sheets, the floor surrounding the edge of the bed, and the nightstand. I checked the clothes I was wearing, but it was nowhere to be found. I shrieked when I came to the realization that Mr. Volkov had taken it. I was truly trapped here. He had taken everything anyway from me, and now he was going to take my freedom too. I rushed over to the black door and I pulled on the handle. It wouldn't budge. I put my foot on the door for leverage and kept pulling as hard as I could. I pulled until my hands were sore, but I got nowhere. The panic settled in as I realized I couldn't get out. I screamed over again till my throat was raw, and I began pacing the room, banging my fists against the door, even though I knew it was an effort in futility. Suddenly a landline rang in his bedroom, so I picked it up, knowing it must have been Mr. Volkov. Juliette, I know you're upset, but I couldn't have the risk of you running away, you understand? Angelo laughed from the other end like this was all some kind of sick joke. As if he proudly trapped me like a rat in a maze. I want to leave. I shrieked into the phone. Okay, and where do you want to go? I don't understand why won't stay here. Angelo started muttering in Russian. I was quiet for a moment as he hurled curses into the air. I pressed the phone to my chest, praying to God he couldn't hear my heart pound in my chest. I was terrified of him. I didn't want him to know, so I didn't say anything. I just hung up the phone. I looked around the room. I wondered if he was ever going to let me out of this room. I wondered what he was going to do with me when he was through with me. As I stood in the middle of Mr. Volkov's bedroom, pondering the implications of why I was here and how it would end for me, his bedroom door swung open. There he appeared in the doorway, a handsome shadow figure. The fear had left my body and I saw red. I was consumed with anger as I stormed him. I've done everything I can think of. What the fuck do you want? What the fuck, Juliette? Angelo studied my angry eyes. You're a murderer. I shook my head at him in disbelief he couldn't understand. I saw blood all over your hands. I saw you stab him, and more than that, you loved it. I shut my eyes, trying not to think about what I saw him do. We all have to do things that aren't so respectable. I think you can understand that. I just enjoy what I do, he tried to reason with me. Will you hurt me if I don't do what you want? I asked the question I was scared to know the answer to. He was silent for what felt like an eternity. I could hear my heart pounding, waiting for his reply. I've thought about it. I've thought about locking you away. I've thought about strangling you till you wouldn't dare even let the thought of going against me cross your mind, but ultimately no, I decided I would never hurt you ever, not you. Angelo stepped forward and I stepped back in response. I saw this opportunity to make a run for it, so I did. and this time he didn't catch me. I wasn't quite sure where to go as he had fucking drugged me, so I didn't know exactly where the elevator was. My stomach dropped as he chased me through his penthouse. I finally stopped in my tracks as I got to the living room, and there was a painting of me. I swear it was. It was the size of the whole wall. Once he finally caught up to me, he grabbed my wrists. I was catatonic as I stared at the portrait of me. WHWH, what the fuck is this, Angelo? I stumbled into his chest as he wrapped his arms around me to restrain me. You? Angelo looked down at me, and he actually allowed the corners of his lips to turn up into a small smile. I've never been so sure that she is somebody before. She is you, he insisted, but I still didn't understand. Sit. Angelo shoved me down on the couch. His goons remained in the doorway, so there was nowhere to run this time. I don't know what the fuck this is, but I'm going to call the cops if you don't let me go. Now, Angelo, please. You promised you wouldn't hurt me. I reached for my phone, but it wasn't in my pocket anymore. I looked for it frantically, and then I remembered I didn't have it. Angelo smirked, pulling it out from his pants pocket. You can have it back in a few minutes. Allow me to explain, Juliette. The police can't help you. The law belongs to me, Juliette. I am the law. My word is law. He was so smug, I wanted to smack him. So I did, right across his perfectly smug jawline. Angelo grabbed my wrist in response. He was shocked that I would dare touch him like that. I was shocked that I did too, but I was glad I did it, even if it was the last thing I ever did. Angelo grabbed my throat and he stared into my eyes, deeply, intensely, longingly. I was entranced as he squeezed tighter and tighter until I was forced to shut my eyes. When he released, I gasped for air before him. Allow me to explain, Juliette. Angelo looked lovingly at the largest portrait of me that hung on the wall. I waited impatiently. I was silent, but I was squirming where I sat. I was crawling out of my skin with anxiety and fear, a potent mixture. I sunk my nails into the couch as I anticipated his next move. My father was murdered about 7 years ago. My father was everything to this family, to this organization, to me and my brother, so you can see how retribution was in order. Angelo chuckled morbidly a bit to himself. I've killed the man who killed my father, but I know he does not work alone. For the past 7 years I've been searching for that man, whatever it takes. I've had the same nightmare for the past 7 years, every single night without fail. In some way or another, that fucking ghost accomplice tries to take my life, but an enchanting angel revives me each time and I wake up. Angelo sounded crazy, but he was serious. He was always serious. I don't see what this has to do with me. I scanned the room for a way out, but there was no viable route. I wasn't sure she existed, so I had her drawn for me, painted for me, sculpted over and over, till she was the woman from the dreams. That's her, and she is you, Angelo insisted. I swallowed hard as I looked at the portrait. It was undeniably me. But this wasn't right, this was crazy. He looked into my eyes, longing as I looked all around him for a chance to escape. The panic eventually set in when my eyes rested on the gun poking out of his waistband. I was never going to get out of here. Do you love me? I looked into his stormy eyes. Yes, he clenched his jaw. I could tell by his tense body that he meant it. This is why you? I began before he interrupted me. I would never hurt you, stay with me. Angelo touched my face. I let him this time. I believed that he wouldn't harm me now. I don't want to be yours. I shook my head at him. Despite his kind gestures and the undeniable attraction I faced, he was unpredictable and cruel, and I feared for the day when he turned on me. I feared for the life I would live with him. Darkness consumed his features. He looked away from me for a moment, and then he swallowed hard, before snapping back to stare into my eyes with a soul-piercing gaze I wouldn't dare break. You don't have a choice, Juliette. Angelo's intentions came to light. If you try to leave me, I'll kill Ariana, I promise, Juliette. You can't. Please don't, Angelo, I whimpered as the tears streamed down my cheeks. I can do whatever I want, my beautiful girl. You know that you've seen me do it. His voice was so warm and gentle. He pet my hair as he consoled me with threats against my loved ones to keep me close to him. What do you want me to do? I whispered. I looked down in my lap. I didn't want to see the evil swimming in his eyes. Just stay with me, that's it. Be my little princess. Angelo smiled at me as if he hadn't just traumatized me. He touched my jaw with his tattooed fingers, and thumb gently brushed against my lip. I will never be yours, I reminded him as I accepted my fate. Juliette, you will find a man like me gets whatever the fuck he wants. At any cost. He added with a sharp tongue. Chapter 14. Juliette's POV. I sat in the living room of his penthouse. It was beautifully decorated, and it had been well put together by an interior designer with impeccable taste. But no matter how impressive and expansive the room might have been, I couldn't help but feel suffocated. Every wall I looked at had some type of artistic representation of me, and upon my arrival, Angelo would spend his time simply staring at me for what felt like an eternity. I felt as if I was art myself, but instead of being viewed by the masses, I was obsessed over and harbored by a serial killer freak. I was in a daze as I sat there. I had stopped contemplating my escape now that I was aware that he wasn't above harming my loved ones as well. Angelo began moving out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head slightly to look at him. He slowly unbuttoned his shirt in front of me. With each button, the fabric opened more, revealing every inch of his toned, muscular, inked form. What the hell do you think you're doing? I furrowed my brow at him. I'm going to shower. I suggest you join me. You have a big day ahead of you. I expect you to be on your best behavior. Angelo came closer to me so that he could run his thumb across my bottom very slowly and seductively, simply taunting me, his shirt hanging off his shoulder. I know how to shower alone. I rolled my eyes at him. His lips curled into a wicked smile, and he reached out to grab my throat. Don't roll your fucking eyes at me, Juliette. His eyes narrowed at me. And then he gestured for me to follow him. We stood before a shower. It was luxurious. It was made out of some type of stone. I had never seen anything like it, and the steam wrapped around us. The warm water was inviting. I immediately took notice of one thing. There were 2 shower heads coming from the ceiling, which meant that the shower was intended for 2 people. I admired the marble floor designed just for someone to bathe. It was exquisite. It would have been a crime to deny a shower in such conditions. There he took his pants off in front of me, and he reached for a towel, only in his black satin boxers now. With every move he made, his body tightened and flexed, and I couldn't help but take notice. I am not taking my clothes off. I crossed my arms over my chest. Angelo laughed at me. You know, nobody is as funny as you are, Juliette. He turned the water on. I've seen you naked plenty of times. What are you? Scared? He taunted me. I raised my eyebrow at him. He was correct. He had seen me naked plenty of times. I decided to take the bait. I'd tease him a bit. I knew how desperately he needed me, and there was no want left. He turned to face his side of the shower, and I couldn't help but think back to our first time together in the penthouse as the warm water ran over my flesh. How he grabbed me, the way he threw me on the ground, tearing at my clothes like an animal. How he brought me so close to orgasm, just to pull away as if it never happened at all, leaving me nothing but a slippery mess. I switched the water from hot to cold, letting it rush over me, washing away the temptation, as he was in fact the fucking devil. He spent his entire shower with his back turned towards me. I admired his expansive skull back tattoo, but he never once took a peek at me. For somebody who desired me so much, he left much to be desired. I had planned to put on something of a show for him, touching my body in sensual ways, letting the temperature of the water manipulate my senses, and maybe even incorporating the suds and bubbles into the show. I stole a glance or two at what he was packing, and I wasn't surprised. I could see where his confidence radiated from. He might have actually been a god. See something you like? Angelo cleared his throat. I met his gaze, and he was smirking at me. He turned off the water and reached for a towel on the rack and wrapped it around his waist. I don't. I bit my lower lip, looking at the tattoos that covered his abs. Angelo chuckled. He wasn't naive about the influence he held over me. He reached for another towel, and he wrapped it around my body, before running his hands through the long strands of my wet hair. While you think of something better to say, I'll inform you about your shift tonight. Follow me. You'll have to forgive me. I wasn't expecting you here at the penthouse. I don't stay here often, only during late nights at the club. This should suffice for your solo dance. Afterwards, I'll have different attire ready for you. As he turned to walk away, I allowed myself to watch him saunter, his muscles glistening with water droplets, his back tattoo giving him a sinister air. I ran my fingers over the lavish material and the crystals that were studded into the waistband and bottoms. It was a beautiful piece. The costumes that Angelo chose for me were always sexy and elegant with a lot of hand beating. They must have cost a fortune. When I had put it on, I twirled around in the mirror feeling like an ice queen vixen. My heels clicked against the floor as I searched for Angelo to tell him I was through getting ready. I found him sitting in the living room. He was dressed now, wearing a suit as he typically did, with a lot of jewelry. As I approached him, I noticed how he smelled. I couldn't quite place the scent, but it was intoxicating. It was something he wore the same night we had our first private dance. Can I go to work now? I squinted my eyes at the thought of having to ask permission, but I figured it was the fastest way to get to my shift. I worked every shift except one with Ariana. I thought it would be my only time to explain things to her, as I didn't have my phone. I suppose you go shake your ass like a harlot downstairs, sure. Angelo looked at me displeased. I couldn't help but giggle at his terminology. Harlot? I questioned his outdated choice of words. Would you prefer whore? He raised both eyebrows at me, and then looked down at his diamond-encrusted watch like he needed to be somewhere. I followed Mr. Volkov into the elevator. He spent the entire ride down staring at his watch. Once the elevator doors opened, he personally walked me to the dressing room so I could apply the layers of makeup needed to look like a Barbie. I'll see you in an hour, something's come up. Vlad will come to get you when I'm back, Angelo whispered against my ear and kissed my forehead as if we were in love. I turned around to face the room from the doorway, and all eyes were on me. Angelo Volkov never involved himself with his employees, especially the strippers, and he would often express disdain for the profession, him only venturing into it for the lucrative aspects. I sat down at my vanity and began working my face. I was puffy from crying, I was stressed out from being kidnapped, and I was not looking forward to answering questions. The first person who had something to say was Penelope. I knew he was into you when I ran into you two in the private rooms. God, Juliette? Penelope grimaced. She looked worried for me. I can't believe you're actually fucking the boss, the fucking mob boss. Emily seemed ecstatic. There was even a twang of jealousy in her voice. Guys, nothing is going on, I swear, just a few private dances, normal stuff. Emily, you did one, remember? He hates strippers, and he would never get involved with his employees. Be real. I raised my eyebrow at them and nonchalantly applied my eyelashes, hoping that they would believe me. The conversation quickly changed after some mumbling and head nodding. I was grateful, but Ariana was nowhere to be found. Hey Em, I elbowed her as she stuffed her bra. Where's Ariana? I tried to play it off like I didn't care too much. Oh, she didn't tell you? Thought you two were close. She switched her shifts around, something about family problems. Emily gave me a half smile and went out onto the floor. I plopped down on the couch. Angelo wouldn't give me my phone back, wouldn't be much good anyway. I'm sure Ariana had blocked me. I snatched a cigarette off the cushion and lit it up. I was supposed to be working, but Angelo could absolutely suck it. He was holding me hostage, with the thought of killing the only person whom I consider family. A few hours into sulking, I decided to go out on the floor. I saw a familiar woman walk in with an unfamiliar man, and ahead of them was Alexander. The three of them went past the velvet rope down the hall that nobody was allowed down without invitation. It led to the private club for Mafia members only. A young man, probably about 20 years old, called me over to his table for a lap dance. I swayed my hips to the loud club music and adjusted my breasts in my hot pink lingerie. What's your name? The man asked me, twirling my hair around just as Mr. Volkov would do. Jules, you know, 'cause diamonds are a girl's best friend. I giggle and sit on his lap, winding my hips to the music as he placed cash in the waistband of my bottoms. His hands wandered, finding my bare thighs. He gripped them, and before I could snap my neck to tell him, "Hands off," a menacing presence stood behind me, and a deep, raspy voice coated in a Russian accent spoke harshly towards to the customer. "Every finger you put on her skin, I chop off." Mr. Volkov snatched the man's hand and dropped it onto his lap. His eyes widened at the sight of Angelo Volkov. He collected his things off the bench and found somewhere else to be with haste. "I apologize for not being able to take you to the club sooner. However, I had to tie up some loose ends." Mr. Volkov inhaled hard and wiped his nose. He was high yet again. "You mean get high and kill some people? You're really doing God's work." I crossed my arms over my chest and rolled my eyes at him. "I will do anything to avenge my father and keep this organization safe." He furrowed his eyebrows at me, completely avoiding my accusations about him being high. "Now enough of this brattiness. Come, you must get changed. I don't want you dressed like this." Mr. Volkov grabbed my arm and dragged me past Vlad, who guarded the velvet rope. I followed him hesitantly into one of the many rooms of the long hallway to get dressed into whatever outfit he had chosen for me this time. "I want to pick my outfits." I shot him a nasty look as he handed me yet another white shopping bag. "I'll take you shopping then. Tomorrow is your day off. Will that suffice?" Angelo asked me with a pleasant demeanor, but I could tell he would have said anything to get me to cooperate with him. He wasn't used to such defiance. "I don't want you to buy me anything with your dirty blood money," I scoffed, taking the dress and shoes out of the bag. I removed the dress from the bag first. It was a latex type of material. It was powerful and commanding, and it was sexy. It was different from the light-colored materials I would have chosen for myself. This dress had a darkness to it. I pulled out the shoes next. They added a pop of color to the black Gothic dress. They were bright red and the fabric was satin. As soon as I had adorned the material Mr. Volkov had gifted me, he was drawn to me like a moth to a flame. He approached me, eager to admire his doll. "Ty prekrasna, ya ne kochu otvodet ot tebia glaz," Angelo spoke in Russian to me as he admired me in the dress he bought. I looked at myself in the mirror, and he came up behind me and put his hands on my waist. "I don't understand, Angelo." I smiled at him just for a look that sparked in his eye when he looked at me. "You are stunning. I never want to take my eyes off of you." His hands resisted on my hips. I admired the way we looked together side by side in the mirror. We looked like power. "Let's just get this over with, Mr. Volkov." I cleared my throat. Chapter 15. Juliette's POV. As we entered the private club, the atmosphere shifted. The air was heavy with the scent of cigars, mingling with the subtle notes of expensive whiskey. Angelo led me through the dimly lit room, his hand resting gently on the small of my back. The club was filled with men who exuded power, their tailored suits accentuating their commanding presence. Conversations were hushed as Angelo and I made our way to a secluded corner where his brother, Alexander, and a few other familiar faces were sitting. Eyes followed our every move, whispers circulating among the gathered guests. Angelo leaned in, his voice low. He sensed I was nervous. "It's just a get-together with friends, nothing to worry about tonight," he reassured me. I plastered a polite smile on my face, even though I would have much rather been shaking my ass for tips in the strip club. I watched Angelo closely. He was the picture of an influential and respected figure. With each conversation, his influence and authority were affirmed. He commanded attention, and everyone in the room knew better than to cross him. Angelo sat down with a grin on his face, laughing as he greeted Vlad and Xander. He shook his brother's hand firmly and patted his lap for me to sit. Alexander gave me a look of disapproval as I draped my arms around Angelo's neck. He looked at his younger brother crossly and muttered something in Russian, to which Angelo smirked and replied in the same tongue and carried on. "What did he say?" I nudged Angelo. "He asked why I brought you, and I told him because I couldn't risk you trying to run away." The three started playing a game of cards. I turned my head and looked over my shoulder. There was that woman that I had seen weeks earlier yelling at Xander over Mr. Volkov, and she was looking right at me with piercing brown daggers. "Why don't you get us something to drink at the bar?" "You look awfully bored," Angelo suggested. I cleared my throat and looked across the way at the bar station. On the way to the bartender, I scrunched my nose at how I was going to fetch him a drink. At least I was getting one too. There was a line, but upon my arrival, the line parted with assumptive whispers, as if I was Angelo Volkov himself. The bartender was an older man, his salt and pepper beard was trimmed well, and his hair was a shiny silver. He had the most gentle face out of anyone here. "Hello, my name is Eric. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you." He held out his hands to hold mine. I wasn't used to this type of treatment, all because Mr. Volkov chose me as his. "May I please have a glass of champagne and a double shot of vodka on the rocks?" I smiled at him politely, dropping a few dollars into his tip jar. I leaned my elbow on the counter as I waited for the drinks to be made, shifting my focus back to the booth. There was the woman with the piercing brown daggers twirling her dark hair around her fingers, laughing and laughing, a little bit too much, at something Angelo had said. I thanked the bartender for the drinks, and sauntered my way over to the booth, swaying my hips as if I were on the floor of the strip club. Something about the duality of fear and affection had woven a fragile bond between him and me, giving strange, uneasy feelings in the pit of my stomach. I felt a burning in my throat, and maybe a twang of anger. The woman leaned her butt against the edge of the table. She was wearing a dark purple dress. She had jet black hair and dark brown eyes. She was older than me by a few years, and I assessed that it seemed Angelo did not want to deal with her by how irritable he looked. "Vodka for my Russian." I slid into the booth, gliding the shot glass in front of Angelo, which made him look a bit cheerier. He leaned his head into the crook of my neck, gently trailing light kisses up to my ear, tickling me and causing me to giggle. Her eyes diverted to Xander. They began speaking in Russian nonchalantly. The mysterious woman disappeared, clinging to a young man in a suit that Alexander referred to as a runner. Once she was well out of earshot, the gentlemen began exchanging their comments about her. "Anything to get into the club, I see," Xander snickered. "Cavorting with our errand boy," Alexander shook his head in disapproval. "Her father won't be happy to hear this," Vlad interjected, and they all agreed. Angelo wasn't interested. He couldn't have cared less about the conversation. His eyes were entranced with me as he slammed the burning liquid down his throat. The card game continued, taking very frequent breaks to replenish their drinks and anecdotes or cursing. I didn't really understand the game. They were playing poker, and it seemed Angelo was doing the best at it, and Alexander was a sore loser. He whispered something in Russian. I knew it was most likely a slur, and he took out a small clear plastic bag of white powder from a secret compartment in his wallet. I swallowed hard, trying to keep a straight face, trying to keep the emotion from becoming apparent in my features. Angelo's eyes practically lit up at the illicit powder, and the men of power began each taking lines off a silver platter that was passed around the table. It was never handed to me before. It was offered to me by some of the girls I worked with before, but this time when it came to me, they looked at me as if they expected me to partake. I froze there. My heart felt like it was the only thing moving. I could feel their eyes on me, and I couldn't quite get the words out. I stood up without a sound, and pushed through all the private members, my brisk walk turning into a jog. I got past the red curtain exit, and tried any doorknob down the long hall, throwing myself into one of the bedrooms designed for prostitutes. I slammed my palms down onto the vanity, and looked at myself in the mirror. What have I become? I shut my eyes hard. Seconds later the doorknob turned and Angelo crept in. "You have no idea what kind of danger running away from me puts you in." His tone was harsh, but full of concern. "Why? Will you kill me?" I threw my head back with laughter. He opened his mouth and I interrupted him. "I don't want to hear your empty threats. Go back out there and snort yourself into a heart attack with your serial killer family." I squinted at him, expecting an act of aggression in return. Instead, he sat on the bed very calmly, and he asked me why I was so upset. It was like pulling the wrong piece in a game of Jenga. I just broke down. It wasn't enough you hold me hostage, you sit there and do drugs in my face. I won't be around that. The room became blurry as my eyes filled up with tears. I explained to him how drugs destroyed what little family that I had left. His expression never faltered from stone cold and emotionless. I apologize for my irreverent behavior. I was rather callous, and I shouldn't be that way towards you. Sometimes I'm not good at these things. He cleared his throat and adjusted his collar. This was the first time that I had heard him apologize, and I could see quite clearly how uncomfortable it made him to be in that position. Thank you, I nodded at him. I must ask, your opposition seems like it comes from a place of trauma. Did your father hurt you? I was caught off guard by the question. I slammed my teeth together in my mouth, grinding them together. Once. It was after a long day of work and I had come home from school. He found out I had thrown away his stash. He was so angry, you should have seen the look in his eyes. I closed my eyes, picturing the image of his drug-induced rage. He wiped away the single tear that fell from my eye, and covered my hands with one of his as he made a phone call. He spoke in Russian very calmly, his tone gentle. I didn't understand what he was saying, but he had promised he would take care of my father, that he would never harm me again. You can't kill him. I furrowed my brows, and my stomach dropped at the thought of finally losing everyone I'd considered family. I promise. Just a conversation. Now let me show you how truly sorry I am. With a dance, Angelo stood up and extended his hand to me. I've never danced like that before. I took his hand and he spun me around into his arms. Follow my lead, he smirked at me, eager to teach me something new. There was something brilliantly blindsided about Angelo Volkov's confidence. It didn't matter how simple or how scary the situation, his bravery made you feel safe. Angelo led me onto the dance floor, his grip possessive yet strangely tender. My heart pounded in my chest as he slowly guided my arms around his neck, and his hands found my hips, pulling me in ever so gently. Fear mingled with an unsettling allure as I gazed into his intense, stormy eyes, a man driven by obsession in all aspects of life. He held me close to his chest. I allowed my body to melt into his as we swayed to the sultry music. For a moment, I almost forgot that I was being held against my will. Suddenly, the music ceased. Chatter amongst the members could be heard, and through the crowd emerged Eva, her full lips curled into a wicked smile, her arms knotted behind her back with something. Immediately, Angelo sprung into action. The dominant, sinister side took control of him. As quickly as Eva could aim her gun at me, it settled into the air. I opened my mouth to scream, but it was covered by the sound of gunfire. The bullet missed me as Angelo grabbed Eva's arm. The second she fired off a round, the gun hit the ground with a loud clunk, and it slid across the floor. The struggle ensued as a dozen masked and armed men stormed the private club from the back entrances. It's a setup, Angelo shouted. He threw Eva to the ground, disregarding the fight, and took my arm. What's happening? I shouted over the gunfire, and panicked as I ran, trying to keep up the pace with him. I followed him into a room that was labeled storage, however it was just a hidden doorway to the outside. We ran to his black Cadillac, meeting up with Xander and Vlad in the parking lot. Where's my brother? Angelo questioned them. They both looked at each other and shrugged. Angelo groaned, and then turned his attention toward me. I can't tell you how sorry I am. I shouldn't have ever allowed her inside. I should have. I could see how genuinely apologetic he was, so I stopped him. Thank you for protecting me. I'd like to leave now, I anxiously interrupted him. Chapter 16. Juliette's POV. I had always known the stark contrast between my life, a poor unfortunate soul from a broken home, an exotic dancer, not even a full high school education, and the opulent world of Angelo Volkov, the heartless Russian mob boss, who had held me captive in more ways than one. My nights were filled with the neon glow of strip club lights, while his were adorned with crystal chandeliers that bathed the mansion's corridors in a golden hue. Now I was within the pearly gates that guarded the devil's den. I had only heard of the cruelty and whispers of the dark deeds that went on within these luxurious walls. But now, with no choice, and my life dangling before me, ready to be ripped away at any given second, seemingly for a relationship I did not ask for. I was able to find some form of sanctuary inside. A chance to catch my breath, as every entrance and hallway was heavily patrolled by armed guards. For some reason, as I followed him through the echoey mansion, I expected to see something that signified evil, but everything was as it was, like a museum. The scent of roses and wealth enveloped my senses. Yet still I could feel a darkness that loomed within the halls, that lived on past the facade. This mansion had seen unspeakable things, and no amount of pleasant decor would hide that. My heart was pounding with fear and uncertainty from the silence that had been brewing since we started the drive over here. However, I couldn't deny the allure of the world that he lived in. We had barely escaped the shootout, on my end at least, if it hadn't been for him. I looked up at him. The same emotionless expression rested in his eyes. My body still trembled from the adrenaline of almost dying, and if he had been an ocean, there wouldn't have been a ripple. His cold, calculating eyes fixated on me, as if he was trying to read my mind. "Welcome to my domain, Juliette," he murmured, his voice as smooth as silk. "You'll find that safety and danger often fall hand in hand in my world, but don't worry, nothing that comes past these gates leaves alive." With those ominous words, we came to the end of the hallway where he opened one door out of the two double black doors. "Who is she?" I asked him. Obviously she had been a jealous lover, or perhaps an enemy, or maybe both. He fell silent for a moment as he led towards two double doors. These doors led to a master bedroom, modern features, luxurious, and as it looked, practically untouched. I could only assume he was insinuating that I'd share a bed with him. Eva, she was a lover, a good time, a distraction, a lethal one. I knew it was dangerous to get involved with her, yet I let my urges get the better of me. Angelo furrowed his eyebrows. "What do you mean, dangerous?" I poked at him for more information on my almost killer. "I am not my father. I am not a man of grace. I am not a man of love, nor do I want peace. Eva's father is a very powerful man, like me, and by God, Juliette, I may have started a war." Angelo chuckled as if it were funny. "I don't even love you, and because of this twisted relationship you have me woven into, I could have died." My stomach dropped as the realization set in. His face hardened at the words, "I don't love you." However, he quickly was able to put his own feelings aside to care for mine. "I wouldn't have let you die in any scenario. You will live a happy, full life with me. I promise. Now get some sleep." Angelo couldn't possibly be serious. There he was, serious as a judge. "You can't be so delusional," I snorted in derision. He cocked his handsome head to the side and raised his eyebrow, wishing me to elaborate on this topic. "One, I'm not going to spend my life with you. I will get out of here, and two, I am not sleeping in the same bed as you." I shook my head. His confident smile turned into a frown. Angelo closed the space between us, holding my head underneath my chin ever so gently, lifting up my face to look him in the eyes. "I don't think you really have a choice, my Juliette. But as for the bed situation, I don't sleep with anyone, it's not safe. I'll show you to your room, it's nearing quite a late hour." He grabbed my wrist and guided me down the long hallway. I wondered what were in all the rooms behind closed doors until we got to the white door that he said belonged to me. I wondered what he meant by, "It's not safe." "I invite you to try to escape me, Juliette, but you'll find that now, since entering my world and being seen with me, everyone knows you're mine. You have a target on your back. Remember that. Only I can keep you safe." He taunted me with his words as his eyes wandered the curves of my body, settling at my hips. I felt a sensation of heat spread between my legs. His thumb gently rubbed my bottom lip, as I was paralyzed to give him a response. I closed my eyes and pulled away from his touch, then sat down on my bed. "Don't you ever fucking resist me. Look at me now." He grabbed a handful of my hair from the back of my head. Angelo didn't yell, but he was assertive enough to make me feel it in my bones. I snapped open my eyes to look at his stormy, dark, angry turquoise seas he called eyes. He stood over me, smiling like a psychopath while I was at eye level with his belt, and gently patted my head, running his fingers through the ends of my hair. "Take it off." "Take what off?" I muttered innocently. "All of it." He discarded his jacket, and I slowly rose up to unbutton his white dress shirt. I ran my fingers over his bare chest, feeling every muscle he had to offer, slowly working my hands down to his belt. As I undid the belt, the task became more and more difficult as he grew harder and harder. "Such a good girl, you listen to me so well." Sometimes, he looked down at me like he was a hunter and I, his prey. There he went, placing his hand underneath my chin again, this time giving me a gentle forehead kiss. "I'm going to shower. I apologize about the lack of accommodations for you. I left you a shirt of mine to sleep in." He turned off the main light and switched on the bedside lamp. "Good night, my Juliette," he kept referring me to as his, in every sentence he could. This man was driven by obsession, devotion, delusion, and lust, and he had it mixed up with love. He wanted property, not a partner. Still, I was almost grateful at least that I had a roof over my head and I was back to being safe, but for how long I didn't know. These feelings kept me tossing and turning for quite some time. And I wrestled with the fact that no matter how evil Mr. Volkov might have truly been, I couldn't deny the temptation that surrounded him. I was spiraling. I woke up in a fit, completely sprawled out, my body tangled in the disarray of blankets. I touched my face in shock, my own dreams plaguing me to wake up. My cheeks were damp and so were my eyes. I had been crying in my sleep. I switched on the light and wandered out into the hallway. It was still the middle of the night. It was eerily quiet in the halls. I retraced my steps back to where Mr. Volkov had shown me his room earlier that night. The door was open just a crack, so I invited myself in. There he stood with his back facing me, dressed in his boxers and black socks. He pressed his gun to his head. I pushed open the door, rushing him, immediately reaching up for the gun, but he was faster than me. He set it down on the nightstand skillfully. I began angrily beating his chest with my fists, tears pouring down my face, my heart racing. "You were going to kill yourself? Why? Why would you do that?" I screamed at him. "I wasn't going to kill myself." He furrowed his brows at me and placed his hands over mine, intertwining our fingers. "I saw you, you had the gun, you were," I began before he interrupted me. "I just think about it. I do it often. I never actually pull the trigger," he explained in a monotone voice with no emotion, no connection to what he was saying. In fact, it seemed like he thought he was making it better. He took my hand and brought me to his bed to sit. "Why?" I looked up at him. "Sometimes, I wish for just a few moments of numbness. You don't understand the fragility of my life. Money isn't everything. It isn't anything when you've lost everyone care about and can't close your eyes or turn your back without worrying about being shot at." His expression hardened and his tone was cold. "Why don't you sleep with anyone? Why isn't it safe?" My bottom lip quivered as my heart soaked in his unseen hardships. "I might hurt you unintentionally. My dreams are very real for me. The vivid image of my father's death replays over in my mind, and the threat turns on me. I can't control myself." Angelo took a sip of clear liquid from his short glass. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be, it's just how it is for me. This is the hand I was dealt. I think you can understand that." Angelo smirked at me. "When my father started using drugs to cope with the death of my mother, I started taking part-time jobs. When his habits eventually impacted his performance at work, which led to him being fired, which led to us losing the house that I grew up, I dropped out of school, and my only friend, ex-friend, Ariana, told me about this lucrative job at nights she did. I never expected to be here. I gestured to everything that surrounded us, to the situation I was in now, to everything that led us here." Angelo rummaged in his nightstand drawer, and my laptop and cell phone sat there waiting for it to be returned to its owner. He placed them in my hands. "Well, my little dancer, if you let me, you'll never have to run again. Come on." He took my hand, his abdomen tightening and flexing with every move he made. I followed him back to the white door that belonged to me now. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to face my fears when I closed my eyes. I didn't want to ask him to stay. I didn't want him to hold me. I didn't want to be the one from his dreams if it meant living in fear. If it meant losing the people I cared about. I laid back down in the unfamiliar bed, dressed in a killer's garments, and wondered if there had ever been bloodstains on this shirt before. As he went to turn the light off, I gasped, I panicked, I was afraid. I had never been afraid of the dark before, not even when I was a little girl. "What's wrong, Juliette?" Angelo turned the light back on and came to sit on the edge of the bed. I admired the way he would rush to my side any time I was uncertain. "You're safe here. Alexei and Victor will be outside your door all night," Angelo attempted to comfort me, but even he knew you couldn't be comforted from your dreams. "My dreams?" I looked over at the window. "You nightmares keep you from wanting to shut your eyes as well?" Angelo turned off the light, knowing it would scare me. I began to panic again, grabbing for his arm in the dark. Once I found it, I pulled his entire body into mine, and he turned on the nightstand light. Our faces were inches away from each other, my cheeks warm and rosy, his eyes full of adoration and lust for me. His lips begged to introduce themselves to mine. My eyes traveled down his chest, over the sporadic foreign phrases inked into his muscular, carved body, all the way down to his verses line where his Versace boxers rested. The imprint of his throbbing, thick erection was waiting there just for me. Teasing me. "Fear is a potent aphrodisiac." He gave a raspy chuckle, his arms flexing outward next to my head. My eyes widened as he ran a finger down my lower lip, my neck, my chest, my sensitive nipple hardening down my stomach where he played with my panty line. My body responded like a magnet to his touch, whether I wanted to or not. He knew exactly where I wanted to be felt. That's enough for now," he laughed as my breath became uneven. I cleared my throat and adjusted myself in bed. "Get some sleep, I'll stay with you. Protect you from your dreams." Angelo pressed his forehead against mine. I was eager to accept his proposal, but I knew that my restraint wasn't going to surpass a night where I grappled with fear and anxiety. I'd cling to him like he was my only safe haven. I shook my head, slowly denying his offer. "Don't get it twisted, Angelo. I'm still not in love with you," I scorned him. I had to be cross with him. I had to get my point through. I was not in love with him. Maybe I lusted after him, but I was not in love with him. I was not going to strengthen our bond by leaning on him when I needed support. I wasn't sure if the gentleness he offered to me was genuine. I had seen what he was capable of, and it was all due to selfishness that I was in this predicament in the first place. I couldn't shake the image of a gun pointed at my face. Angelo must understand. He couldn't just get everything he wanted with a snap of a finger. To be continued. Next book. Juliette. I should hate him. I should scream, fight, run. But I crave the man who destroys everything that hurts me. Angelo kills for me, lies for me, cages me in diamonds and violence. He worships me like a possession he intends to keep forever. And the more he unravels me, the deeper I fall into his darkness. But he's hiding something behind those cold jade eyes. Secrets sharp enough to cut me open. A past soaked in blood, danger, and a truth he won't let me touch. Loving him feels like playing wife to a god. And prisoner to a monster. But I can't leave. Not when he touches me like I belong to him. Not when part of me wants to. And that terrifies me more than anything. Angelo. I never expected to love anything again. Until Juliette bled innocence across my brutality, and dared to look at me like I wasn't a demon. She thinks she's free. She thinks she can question me. She thinks I'll let her walk back onto that stage and dance for anyone else. No. My angel dances for me now. When I killed her father, I did it because I couldn't stand the thought of another man hurting what I've claimed. And she can never know. Not yet. Because another ghost from my past has resurfaced, threatening the empire I'm building for her. And threatening the one thing I've never had until now. A woman I would murder nations for. Juliette is my future. My addiction. My downfall. And I will burn the world alive before I ever lose her. This is the second book in the Crown of Sin series. Reading order. King of Sin. King of Vice. King of Wrath. Available now. Don't miss out. Click the button below, and you can sign up to receive emails whenever Daisy Fox publishes a new book. There's no charge and no obligation. https://books2read.com/r/b-a-ffpp-nvhoe. Connecting independent readers to independent writers. Did you love King of Sin, Dark Mafia Romance? Then you should read King of Vice, Dark Mafia Romance by Daisy Fox. Juliette. I should hate him, I should scream, fight, run, but I crave the man who destroys everything that hurts me. Angelo kills for me, lies for me, cages me in diamonds and violence. He worships me like a possession he intends to keep forever, and the more he unravels me, the deeper I fall into his darkness. But he's hiding something behind those cold jade eyes, secrets sharp enough to cut me open. A past soaked in blood, danger, and a truth he won't let me touch. Loving him feels like playing wife to a god, and prisoner to a monster. But I can't leave, not when he touches me like I belong to him, not when part of me wants to. And that terrifies me more than anything. Angelo. I never expected to love anything again, until Juliette bled innocence across my brutality and dared to look at me like I wasn't a demon. She thinks she's free, she thinks she can question me, she thinks I'll let her walk back onto that stage and dance for anyone else. No, my angel dances for me now. When I killed her father, I did it because I couldn't stand the thought of another man hurting what I've claimed, and she can never know, not yet. Because another ghost from my past has resurfaced, threatening the empire I'm building for her, and threatening the one thing I've never had until now. A woman I would murder nations for. Juliette is my future, my addiction, my downfall. And I will burn the world alive before I ever lose her. This is the second book in the Crown of Sin series. Reading order: King of Sin, King of Vice, King of Wrath. Also by Daisy Fox. Crown of Sin series. King of Sin, Dark Mafia Romance. Dark Oath series. Dark Oath, Dark Mafia Romance series, 3 books in 1. Crave the Dark, Dark Mafia Romance. Fear the Dark, Dark Mafia Romance. Own the Dark, Dark Mafia Romance.